Hello and welcome to the Megacast by Actual Tech Media. Today's topic, crafting a transformed IT blueprint around storage, infrastructure, cloud, DR, security, operations, and more. Thank you so much for joining us on the Megacast by Actual Tech Media. On today's event, you'll hear from experts at NetEnrich, Nebulon, Scale Computing, Rubrik, Okta, Red Hat, and NetApp. What an amazing lineup of some of the most innovative technology companies in the world today. You'll hear from their experts and they'll be answering your questions live. If you haven't been on a Megacast before, you should know that we at Actual Tech Media created the Megacast and EcoCast event series to help educate technology professionals such as yourselves on the latest and greatest enterprise technology to help you do it quickly and efficiently from the comfort of your home or office, to help you get all your questions answered, to help you solve your technology challenges, and hey, why not have a chance to win some amazing prizes as well in the process. Now, before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about today's event. My name is David Davis, and I'll be serving as your moderator along with Mr. Scott Becker as well from Actual Tech Media. As I hinted, we've got an awesome lineup of prizes on the Megacast today. I'll be talking about those here in just a moment. But first, I want to encourage your questions in the questions pane of your audience console. We welcome your greetings from across the United States and around the world, but we also want your technical questions on today's topic for our live Q&A sessions. And we even have a best question prize, one for each of our Q&A sessions to help further encourage those questions. I'll talk more about that here in just a moment. We'll also have some poll questions for you during the event, and we always appreciate your feedback on those polls. We want this to be a social event. You could tweet directly from your audience console, and the hashtag for today's Megacast will be automatically appended. I'll be following and retweeting and commenting to just about anyone out there who tweets about the event, so we appreciate that in advance. We also want to call your attention to the Handouts tab. It's there that you'll find some awesome resources hand-selected by today's expert presenters. You'll find free evaluations, trials, ebooks, solution briefs, white papers, and more, so make sure that you check that out. We've got a mega lineup of prizes on today's Megacast, and that is 5 Apple iPhone 13 Pros in your choice of color, as well as an Amazon $500 gift card every 30 minutes on the Megacast. You must be live in attendance to qualify for the prize drawings and meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, which you can find there in the Handouts tab. The winners will be announced by the moderators throughout the event. We also have our best question prizes, one Amazon $50 gift card for each of the Q&A sessions on the event today. That means you have to ask a question to be entered into this prize drawing, and prize winners will be selected and contacted after the event. All prize winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, and grand prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. We do reach out to prize winners via email after the event, and you always have an option to make a donation to the selected charities on the screen here. Over the years, we've donated thousands of dollars to charity, and we would love to help you do that if you win a prize and would like to help someone less fortunate. We've done that in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club. That's where you can download free, easy-to-read enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. You'll find a link to gorilla.guide there in your Handouts tab as well. It's a great way to stay up to date on enterprise technology. These are fun, easy-to-read books that you can download and read on your Kindle, iPad, or mobile device. So I encourage you to check them out at gorilla.guide. The hashtag for today over on Twitter is ATM Megacast. And if you use that Twitter icon there on your screen, that hashtag will be automatically appended when you tweet. We encourage you to follow Actual Tech Media and me, your moderator, David M. Davis, as well, over on Twitter. Subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media social channels as well, including YouTube, where we post all of our latest and greatest event recordings and interviews, and LinkedIn, which has really become kind of the go-to social network for technology professionals. And so I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn. You can do that right there in your audience console. And with that, it's now time to turn it over to fellow moderator, IT industry veteran, and keynote presenter on today's Megacast event, Mr. Scott Becker. Scott's going to set the stage for today's topic. Scott, take it away.
Thanks, David. I'm really excited to be here with you today for this event about crafting a transformed IT blueprint. As an IT pro, you have a lot to consider as you constantly evaluate new technologies. They're intended to help you accelerate your organization's success. And when it comes to technology decisions, we're all forced to be reactive a lot of the time. Typical pattern goes something like this. So there's a tech emergency, we evaluate a solution, we implement the solution, we avert a disaster, and then we go on as before. Every once in a while, it's nice to think bigger. So today's an opportunity to take a big picture view of your organization's technology estate. We're going to think about the overall blueprint. In this megacast, we're going to hear from vendors across the IT spectrum in this one large event. And hopefully you'll discover new solutions that can help move your business forward. And you'll get valuable context about the ways that different types of solutions and services can work together. What I'd like to do now is take a few minutes for a preview of some of the kinds of big picture challenges and issues we'll hear more about today. The first one is a big one, and this is the persistence of hybrid IT. So cloud arrived with a bang more than 15 years ago now. It's sort of shocking how long cloud has been around now. And yet the data center hasn't gone away. We've been hearing the hype since 2005, and it got louder in 2010. In fact, I remember the 2010 timeframe when Microsoft had the slogan that we're all in with the cloud. And yet on-premises systems persist. In fact, new on-premises systems are being bought and installed every day. The reality is that very few organizations are entirely in the cloud or entirely on premises, and hybrid IT is normal. For a while, hybrid was positioned in the market as an interim position. Nobody would want to do hybrid forever. It was merely a transition to the cloud. Now, hybrid seems to be the steady state. There's no sign of that ending. So we'll hear a lot on this theme of hybrid IT today and how it impacts your blueprints. And I did just want to drop in a little Easter egg for you. See if you can spot it today. We're going to hear about something called Dedicated Local Cloud Infrastructure as a Service. That's abbreviated as DCI-AAS. So I guess the local is in parentheses or silent in the abbreviation. But this is related to hybrid IT, and it's a useful concept for IT blueprint architects to be aware of. So see if you can find that reference in one of the presentations today. So edge computing is another model for hybrid. Centralized processing power is great for some things, but for a huge number of industries and applications, the centralized model is not optimal. So we'll hear about advances on the edge computing front. These systems are getting substantially more sophisticated, easier to use, and easier to integrate with your overall infrastructure. Edge computing is essential to a lot of verticals. Some of the ones that come to mind are energy, retail, shipping, hospitality, agriculture, manufacturing, and defense. But that's just a short version of the list. If you're in one of those verticals or even have an application that could benefit from edge computing, this portion of the talk will be relevant to you. A twin of hybrid IT in the modern IT infrastructure space is multi-cloud. In some definitions, multi-cloud is the same as hybrid, but here we'll define it as using two or more hyperscale cloud providers. So think AWS, Azure, or Google, and using those hypercloud providers on an ongoing basis. So sometimes the use of multi-cloud is intentional for performance or cost optimization. Sometimes it's accidental. How can it be an accident? Well, merger and acquisition is a big one. That new company that you brought on has all of their applications built on Azure when you've historically been an AWS shop, as a simple example. Sometimes when you're an organization with a strong departmental culture, different departments are building out their own applications, and they're making different platform decisions based on their needs and the expertise they have in that department. Other times, one platform may not have a certain capability, and so you've had to switch to another platform for a particular application. Meanwhile, the multi-cloud situation can vary in another way. Sometimes it's intentionally or functionally permanent. Other times, there's a conscious decision to migrate from one to another, so multi-cloud will be a temporary situation during that migration. In any event, a lot of the solutions that we'll discuss today combine the advantages and challenges of hybrid IT and multi-cloud So let's look at some of those issues next. So across that broader category of hybrid plus multi-cloud environments, which a lot of us face, there are other challenges that we'll see solutions for today. One is credentials and logins. Managing and securing credentials becomes especially challenging, as you all know, across resources that are spread throughout the data center, throughout the edge, across multiple hyperscale clouds, as well as dozens or hundreds of SaaS applications. And then no discussion of IT blueprints is complete without a discussion of security. While ransomware is top of mind and there are new warnings coming out about cyber weapon concerns related to the Ukraine conflict, we'll step back today and hear about more of a blueprint level concern, and that's systematic situational awareness and how to achieve it. Another challenge that becomes both more difficult but potentially much more powerful in the hybrid IT and multi-cloud world is data protection. So native tools for data protection have limitations, but when you start to look at tools that go across clouds, it opens up some pretty powerful solution blueprints. And of course, whenever you're looking at holistic solutions for data protection, you have to take Microsoft 365 into account. So we'll hear about that as well. In addition to hearing about solutions today, you'll get some valuable tips, tricks, and best practices. And I'll take a moment to highlight one of my favorites. That's the importance of scheduling regular cross-department tabletop exercises to practice for disaster recovery situations. So much comes up during these events. There's so many insights, hidden or undocumented priorities, important applications that are absent from the disaster recovery plan, and just the opportunity to see how other members of the management team think, react, and collaborate. These exercises are really valuable. Now, when we're talking about blueprints in the big picture, a core question is how to build a flexible application platform that positions your organization for the future. This includes things like standardized IT, modern application development elements, and aggressive automation and management. So we'll hear about some innovation for that. Altogether, we'll be looking at a lot of big picture questions and concerns today. So we hope you'll take advantage of this unique opportunity to think about where you are today and where you could be tomorrow with the transformed IT blueprint. So be sure to take a lot of notes, download a lot of handouts, ask a lot of questions, and most of all, think big about how your IT infrastructure can evolve to support and grow your organization. David, back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott. Really, really wise advice there. We appreciate that. It's a great way to set the stage for today's Megacast. I've just brought up the first of two poll questions here on the screen related to Scott's keynote presentation. The question is, what are your biggest IT opportunities? And note that this is a multi-select question, so feel free to select more than one. I'm sure many of you have more than one opportunity in your IT organization. And I will share the results of this poll with you here in just a moment. So I'll give everyone a chance to respond. The opportunities are on the screen there. Perhaps it's making hybrid IT more flexible, agile, and powerful, taking better advantage of multi-cloud infrastructure. Perhaps you're wanting to improve your data protection and disaster recovery or security. Maybe you need to modernize your applications or push more compute to the edge. And these are all the topics that we'll be covering today on the Megacast. So we appreciate everyone's feedback. If you haven't answered one of these polls before, just do it right there in the slides window. And I will now go ahead and share the results of this poll. And the responses here say 60% want to improve their security, followed by 48% data protection. And then after that, make hybrid IT more flexible, agile, and powerful, and modernize your applications. So thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll. And then a last poll before I introduce you to our first presenter on today's Megacast. The question on the screen is basically, what's the time frame for you to take some sort of action to add new IT solutions or update your existing IT hardware, software, infrastructure, and cloud solutions in your IT organization? And I see one person out there who said they didn't see the poll on the screen. If you have any trouble seeing the poll, I encourage you to just push refresh on your web browser, and usually that will resolve the problem. Excellent. Thank you to everyone who responded here to the poll. It looks like most of you are taking action here within the next 12 months to, improve your company's hybrid cloud, security, data protection, and more. Excellent. All right, so with that, it's time to kick off the Megacast with our first presenter. I'm excited to introduce you to Simon Aldama, Practice Director for Risk Operations at NetEnrich. Simon, take it away.
Today, I'm going to be talking about a different way to look at cyber risk. I'm going to be going through some slides today and give you some context on our approach at NetEnrich on how we solve a problem out in the market in terms of understanding risks out in the wild and how it affects the direction of your controls, your security controls. So let's get started. First, a little bit of an overview of NetEnrich. We've been transforming digital operations for organizations for over 13 years. We have 6,000 clients across the world, and we provide a variety of services and NetOps, security ops, DevOps, and we have a team of over 700 professionals worldwide that assist with organizations in terms of managed services, which follows the sun 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Our platform is a data-centric data lake where we have a variety of engines on top of resolution intelligence. And this is a platform that service providers can use to automate their services and to get more context into the analytics around operations and how that can be used to resolve issues using our machine learning on top of our data lake that contains all this operational data that we have acquired for over a decade now. And like I said, we have a variety of different automation type of algorithms that really automate, threat intelligence. We automate the ability to understand impact, and it provides context and visibility into risk associated with cybersecurity. And these mechanisms really provide a means to decrease disruptions for our clients in a world where there are a lot of unknown threats. So, situational awareness, where do you stand? I have some questions that I'd like you to think about. First, how is the automated collection of threat intelligence currently being utilized to lower risk of your critical assets? Second, what is the frequency in which your team scans external and internal attack surfaces, and how is that monitored up and beyond traditional CVE scanning? Thirdly, what is being done to provide an analysis of controls and defenses, required to protect operations from threats? And finally, the last question I want you to think about as we go through this presentation is, are your current evaluations of risk, based on threats and assets today? And if so, are they qualitative? And what's being done to report risk based on threats and assets quantitatively? And how do you utilize this information to prioritize controls to take care of gaps in your infrastructure? These are 4 questions I want you to think about. So first and foremost, I want you to understand that currently every organization struggles with the misalignment of controls, and everybody is on a journey to align their controls to threats. So currently, one of the problems we see is that risk and the alignment of security controls isn't necessarily aligned with threats in the wild, especially unknown threats. Instead, one of the best practices we see in the market is to utilize a control framework to assist you in guiding an organization to bolster their technical controls, their administrative controls, their tactical controls, and their physical controls based on threats. But what about unknown threats? Are those frameworks really taking threats into context? And the answer is no. If you look at all the risk management frameworks out there, they are not aligned with unknown threats in the wild. And this is where situational awareness comes in. So situational awareness proactively visualizes risk to prioritize protections and controls for assets that are critical to sustaining operations. And we do this with three major work streams. We first perform threat actor investigations against your business and industry in terms of which threat actors in the wild have active campaigns targeting your business. And then we take an attack surface intelligence view of your environment, and we look at it from a threat perspective. How do these known and unknown threat actors, how can they pierce through your attack surface? And third, what we do here is we take all this information and then we perform a variety of threat modeling with adversary emulation. And what this does is this helps us understand which paths a threat actor would take through your infrastructure to what they consider critical assets. So some of the telemetry that we're able to glean is we utilize a threat intelligence platform called Knowledge Now, and that rides on top of our resolution intelligence platform. We have a team of professionals and analysts who regularly monitor this application that we have, in addition to open source intelligence, to understand which threat actors, again, have active campaigns in the wild that are targeting a particular industry or business. And from here, we're able to see all the relevant information that we need to take the next step. And that would be to understand what the attack surface is based on the threat actor's techniques. We combine all of this information into a diamond threat analysis report. And what we're bringing forth here from our threat intelligence is we are understanding the threat actor's capabilities, which are aligned to MITRE ATT&CK. Now, these capabilities are very, very key to aligning your controls to reduce the probability of a threat actor being successful in their mission. And what I mean by that is these tactics and techniques can be utilized to tweak your current tech stack. So if you've invested in a variety of different controls, security controls, such as EDR or network traffic analysis, or maybe you've made some significant investments into a security incident event management system, or maybe your SOC is managed. Whatever the case is, it is very important to align these threat actor capabilities so that you can tweak your behavior detections or your behavior models or your threat detection capabilities so that you can quickly ascertain whether or not these techniques are actually being tripped off by a threat actor inside your environment. very important. We also bring forth the impact of this particular threat actor. Now, impact can be, espionage, it could be data destruction, or it could be some other type of impact, whether it has to do with confidentiality, integrity, or availability of your assets. And this is very important because then you have context. You actually have intelligence about that threat actor, which gives you the power to understand where to look within your environment and understand how to deflect this particular impact. In addition, we also bring forth the infrastructures and the targets that the adversary is known to subvert. Again, to tweak your tech stack, to tweak your current controls, or maybe it's even a simple configuration enhancement of your operating system or of a server workload, as an example, to reduce the impact. From here, what we do is we create a model, and this model currently will be ingested from an IaaS environment, such as AWS or Azure, as an example. And with this model, we are able to run a variety of simulations that are aligned with the threat actor in terms of their behaviors, so that we can see all the paths that that threat actor would take to what they feel are crown jewels of your business. And what I mean by that is, whenever you ask IT ops or net ops or storage ops or SecOps or DevSecOps, whatever operations group you ask, and you ask them, what are the critical assets of the organization to sustain operations before, during, or after a cyber disruption? Chances are everybody's going to think and point in a different direction. But everybody can agree that what the threat actor feels are critical to their campaign is most likely critical to the operations of your organization. From our modeling and from our simulations, we bring forth the central attack paths to provide you additional intelligence on where, again, maybe some configuration enhancements or some compensating controls can be enacted to, as an example, bring down unfiltered administrative access, or, as an example, enhance secrets management, because maybe you have secret keys, access keys, SSH keys, or secrets in general floating around on endpoints. Pretty important to understand what the threat actor would do if that endpoint was, as an example, exploited. What are their attack paths and capabilities from that point going forward? And so we bring these attack paths to you so that, again, you can visualize within our complex environments of IaaS and public cloud, really boil to the top what's important for you to prioritize controls once again. Here's an example of one of our critical attack paths where we have a variety of endpoints, each one having an access key into the IaaS environment. And again, if either one of these endpoints is subverted, or if, as an example, EDR is disabled, or whatever the situation, very important to visualize the attack paths to the critical database on the right-hand side. And so in this example, what we're showing is that based on the current configuration of this demo environment's AWS IaaS environment, we're able to quickly identify where permissions have been granted, not following least privilege. And so this is another example of how we can reduce our risk of configurations that may be able to be tweaked a little bit better in order to, again, protect the critical asset from, again, a confidentiality type of attack, or an integrity type of attack, or availability type of attack that would be, as an example, associated with ransomware. So this is something I really want you to understand. For many, many years, and we continue to do this in the security industry, is we rate our risk qualitatively through a 1 through 5 or a 1 through 10. And these types of risk ratings are dangerous because every stakeholder in the organization will have a different impression of what qualitative is in terms of risk level. But if the data is provided from a quantitative perspective, then when you're dealing with numbers, it's a lot harder for everybody to disagree, and it's a lot easier for the teams to agree what is important to take care of based on time. So in this case, what we're showing you, and this is based on Monte Carlo simulations within our threat modeling software, we're able to depict to you the time to compromise. Very important. So as you can see, there's a 5% chance that if you do not enact a compensating control or a tactical control or a configuration enhancement, you could get compromised in 5 days. And there's a 50% chance that you will be compromised within 74 days, again, if you leave the critical asset unprotected, or if you continue to have that critical asset configured in a way that could be defeated either through confidentiality, integrity, and again, an availability style attack from the threat actor. Moving forward, what we provide based on all of this intelligence that we have gleaned is we then provide you a variety of controls from MITRE Defend. So in the case of spear phishing and phishing, those two techniques, we have some best practices here that you can use to remediate and enhance the protections of your email system, as an example. In addition to that, when we're talking about the technique of compromising accounts, clearly there's a lot of things we could do here, but at a minimum, at least you're focused on the prioritized remediations that will reduce the risk of a threat actor compromising an account and using that to move laterally to get to their high value asset so they can complete their mission. Finally, from a cloud infrastructure discovery perspective, in this case, what we're doing is we're depicting lateral movement here. How would you stop lateral movement based on the techniques and the tactics of the threat actor? Well, here are some suggestions. That's our webinar for today.
Thanks so much, Simon. Actually, it looks like we have a question that populated right now. Is the application you use free? No. Is the no application free?
No. The service that we provide here is not free. However, we can have a conversation to see maybe how you may be able to use this potentially at a trial basis, and that's something we can discuss.
Excellent. Excellent. Looks like we have another question here, Simon. I work with small businesses. What is the sweet spot?
That's a great question. So small businesses, in our experience, suffer from not having the talent or the budget to enact a information security program with, let's just say, all the bells and whistles. And this service really assists small businesses with the information that they need to provide to their potential managed services provider, or to maybe put the executives at ease in terms of what they see on the news every day, And they may have questions about, does this threat I'm seeing on the news affect us? Is there a tie there? Like, what should we worry about? And so for small businesses, this intelligence information will put all of the speculation away and really assist you or assist that business on focusing on best practices controls, especially for known threat actors and unknown threat actors. So that's how this would assist a small business, a medium-sized business, or even a enterprise Fortune 500 to 1000 business. Anybody that is looking to protect their critical assets from not being available or being disruptive, regardless of the size of the business, definitely can benefit from having this consolidated information. And something I didn't talk about is we also provide you a consultative conversation with myself or additional practitioners in case you want to, talk a little bit about your environment. And we can assist you to understand maybe which mitigations or countermeasures would be the right fit for your environment.
Okay, great. And Simon, we actually have a follow-up question related to that. How can the small business integrate this solution with their existing MSP?
That's a great question. So a small business would provide this data to their MSP so that that MSP can have context around the threat actor, tools, techniques, and tactics that are, again, MITRE based. And then that managed service could then tweak their analytic rules within their security incident event management system so that detections are not just spray and pray, right? Like detecting everything, but we could enable that MSP to be more focused on detecting really what matters to that particular business. One size doesn't fit all. When a business is engaging in MSP, every business is unique in terms of their infrastructure, their applications, and the data that they have. And that uniqueness should follow through in terms of the service that the MSP provides to protect the organization from attack. And if we enable an MSP to have this additional threat information, then we're really doing our due diligence and due care to take care of the uniqueness of this business, again, whether it's small, medium, and large, so that we're getting the best return on the security investments that we've made, especially into MSPs and their tech stacks that you're kind of using as a service.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we haven't gotten any more questions here, so that'll wrap up the webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we have Simon's direct contact information listed on the screen there. You can reach out to him directly, or I populated the chat as well with our contact us page, so feel free to reach out and fill out that form, and somebody will be in touch with you to answer all of your questions to help your security organization needs. With that, though, we appreciate you tuning in for our webinar today. And yeah, we wish you just the best of the rest of your day.
All right, great presentation. Thank you so much, Simon. I really appreciate that. We've got a lot of great questions still coming in for NetEnrich, and we appreciate those as well. We'll be routing those over to Simon and the NetEnrich team. We just brought up a poll question, though. We do want to get your feedback on this question. The question on the screen is, what additional information would you like about NetEnrich? And if you ask for some additional information in an electronic question there, just indicate that here on the poll question as well. That's always helpful. If you want to get a personal demo or would like to try it out for yourself, we do want to hear from you here on the poll. And feel free to select more than one as well. I'll leave that poll question up for you to respond to while we announce our first set of prize winners. we've got our first Amazon $500 gift card of today's Megacast going to Robert Rankin of Texas. Congratulations, Robert Rankin. And our first grand prize for an Apple iPhone 13 Pro. This is going to Jeff Bunce from California. Congratulations, Jeff Bunce from California. All right. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll question there. We appreciate your feedback. It's now time, though, to move on to our next presentation on today's Megacast. I'm excited to welcome Mr. Craig Nunez, Chief Operating Officer at Nebulon. Craig, it's great to have you on. Before I hand it off to you, though, we've got a quick poll question for everyone out there in the audience. We'd like to get your feedback on this. The question on the screen is, which of the following is a priority for your IT organization in 2022? And note that this is a check all that apply question here, so feel free to select more than one. Maybe you're interested in accelerating time to service, perhaps centralizing administration of distributed highly available infrastructure, reducing infrastructure and operational cost, reducing infrastructure footprint, resource requirements, or protecting infrastructure against data breaches and ransomware. And I'm starting to see a trend
David,
here
that was a
already.
Mouthful. Yeah.
That was a challenging answer there. Yeah. Thank you, Craig.
That's good. Well, yeah, David, it's super good to be back with you.
It's always great to have you on, Craig. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, we are super excited to jump into the topic. What a great lineup you guys have today. Super interesting. So, yeah, it's good. Hopefully I can hold the energy, hold the attention, get everybody into this topic and ready for the next. So we have...
Absolutely. You always give a great presentation, Craig, and you all at Nebulon have a really cool, really innovative solution to talk about. So let me share the results of this poll. Yeah. And it looks like 66% said protecting infrastructure against data breaches, followed by reducing infrastructure and operational costs. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah. We have seen, related to the data breach ransomware topic, it is literally on fire. We talked to a lot of folks, and some people are okay with what they've got today, but others are less so. It's an important area. There is no one vendor, one solution, and so really, really important. I think the other answers on the survey, I think, fall into line with what we've seen, but we're going to circle back to that ransomware topic near the end of the presentation. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Cool. Good. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in today. My name's Craig, and I am co-founder and chief operating officer over at Nebulon. And I'll introduce the company kind of as we go through the presentation, but for now, let's focus on why you guys are here. We talk a bit about, you're transforming your IT blueprint, and we think, a lot of your initiatives, no doubt, start with the cloud, but not always how you might assume, and we're going to talk a bit about that. The first thing I would say for everyone listening is, there's a few things that we on the vendor side can do to help you as it relates to transforming IT. The first is to just close our mouths and listen. We can't advise, we can't help without a real clear understanding of what you're trying to do, your goals, the challenges and constraints within your organization as you map out your initiative. But then once we have a feel for that, number two is really, to help on the education front. Transforming IT is often rooted in a shift to new technologies, and technologies change every year, and you're probably trying to get something different done that you couldn't get done with technologies you're currently using. So a good understanding of the latest and greatest is key. But it's not just about new technologies. It's also important for us to make the appropriate introductions to others that might also be able to inform your decisions. It might be ecosystem partners, might be other users of the technology being discussed, but it's, you know, it's more than just tech. It's kind of the people side too. The third thing is really helping on the planning side. You know, this involves us rolling up our sleeves, helping you with your business case, the cost benefit analysis, the proof of concept testing, all the things you need so you're well equipped to sell this project internally so you can move forward and get on to the bigger rollout. And then the last piece is, you know, scaling it. And this is a critical part of the operational job that, you know, is got to be done in partnership, incorporating feedback as we go, and comparing, you know, plan versus actual, and, you know, making it better every day. So, you know, we've got a big responsibility here, and I know everybody, you know, all the folks on the vendor side on this webcast take that part seriously. The thing I want to focus on today is the title slide indicated, is the role of the cloud in a lot of the transformation projects that we see today. You know, while the public cloud data center, it's a huge part of any hybrid IT organization, to be sure. There's been a real shift, pendulum swinging the other direction in a way, back on premises for critical applications. But that being said, the public cloud experience has seasoned the expectations with your management, with your stakeholders, users in the company, for what you actually do or deliver in your initiatives. And this is well validated in a November 2021 survey that was done by industry analyst ESG, where they polled about 400 CIOs, and nearly half of them stated they are actively investing now in bringing this, you know, cloud experience on premises. Another industry watcher, IDC, has even given a name to this, what I call as a service IT model. They call it the dedicated cloud infrastructure as a service market. And they forecast it to grow from something less than a couple $100 million last year to a whopping $14 billion by 2025. You know, kind of aligned with this is in that same ESG survey, about 60% of enterprises that they surveyed have already repatriated certain workloads on premises from the public cloud. Andreessen Horowitz, a Silicon Valley VC here, they've identified an average of about 50% cost savings as a result of cloud repatriation, and that being one of the leading rationales for the shift back on premises. Some real interesting perspective from them if you get a chance to hit their blog. So this phenomena that we it is really broad-based. It's kind of crosses or transcends industries. We've seen significant projects underway at the edge in both telecom and healthcare, big core data center projects in manufacturing, financial services, the non-hyperscaler cloud service providers. It's a big deal, and it's happening now. I like how IDC sums it up in the research they did on this new category. They say, look, a move to as a service-based IT offers efficiency. And when they say efficiency, I think velocity in getting your internal objectives done, while at the same time promising a better user experience. And while this kind of IT was mostly associated with services from your favorite hyperscaler, IDC says, look, there's a new class of offerings designed to bring the cloud experience to enterprise premises. And my company, Nebulon, is one of those on the forefront of innovation in this area. Now, what do the hyperscalers have that you don't? And that's a rhetorical question, because there's a few things going on there. Amazon, Google, Microsoft have each developed their own proprietary cloud operating platforms to kind of run the rest of their cloud on. And those cloud operating platforms deliver great efficiencies, especially at scale, while also providing this wonderfully simple experience for application owners running on their platforms. And in fact, they've made some decisions under the covers, you don't really see it from their console, that makes the maintenance of this infrastructure easier for them. They've effectively defined and deployed this homogeneous infrastructure environment. And I would actually turn the question in the slide title around and say, what do you have that they don't have to worry about? Because that's a big part of the friction in moving to this new model. First of all, you've got a wide variety of workloads, I'm sure. Each of those requiring different software stacks for that application, those applications. With different supporting infrastructure underneath that, you might be using an HCI for your virtualization workloads. You might be still using 3-tier for bare metal. What are you doing about containerized applications? Maybe that's something, different yet again. And then, how you treat your edge locations versus your core deployments, maybe more differences there again. So your environment is distinctly not homogeneous, and therein lies a key challenge in trying to get the benefits out of sort of cloud on-prem. How do you harmonize that heterogeneous infrastructure into kind of one cloud operating platform? And there is a way forward, but to better understand the approach, let's talk a little bit about the gold standard in cloud operating platforms with AWS. With AWS, there's 3 elements of the cloud operating platform for their own hyperscale infrastructure. AWS has a centralized console, UI, and API. Kind of call that the AWS Management Console. It does a couple of things. It gives you the ability to provision and monitor infrastructure anywhere. It also handles call it the deep infrastructure operations non-disruptively behind the curtain. This is all the firmware updates, BIOS, patching, security stuff, that is just kind of handled under the covers. The other thing is this console's packaged for you in a way that is effectively maintenance free. You don't ever need to upgrade your AWS console. New capabilities appear seamlessly in the UI like any other cloud-based application. The second element is Amazon's moved away quite some time ago from software-defined services to leverage what they call their Nitro system. This is a company called Annapurna they acquired several years ago and have made that a mainstay with each of their server deployments. It's effectively a server-embedded endpoint, think a card in a server. And this gives them great workload efficiency, great density. It reduces their costs dramatically. It also gives them an isolated security and failure domain within their servers that reduce downtime and service level interruptions. The third piece I'd focus on here is Amazon's approach to machine instantiation for the application users. These they call Amazon Machine Images, or AMIs. It's effectively a catalog of templated applications which give you a consistent, predictable experience every time you provision. And not to get too much in the weeds here, but the public cloud leverages immutable application instances. And the concept of immutable infrastructure, immutable instances is you don't actually make configuration changes or software patches to individual instances or servers. Rather, you simply redeploy your applications with a new instance that has all the necessary changes in place. And what this does, it avoids the server configuration drift that can expose your infrastructure to outside attack, or unplanned outages when you upgrade or patch a whole bunch of servers in one go, servers being at different patch levels and things just not coming back. So that's the AWS kind of approach, their cloud operating platform. Our approach mirrors Amazon's model to really provide call it a non-proprietary cloud operating platform for anyone's on-premises infrastructure. Our equivalent of the AWS Management Console is Nebulon On. It's a cloud-based software as a service platform where we have also taken care of the special security requirements needed when using a cloud-based management approach for on-prem infrastructure. Our equivalent to the Nitro system is the Nebulon Services Processing Unit, SPU, and our NebOS infrastructure and data services. The important element here is that we provide all of this through your trusted server supplier. So you don't purchase anything from us, no new suppliers, no legal, no procurement interactions, none of that. You just go and get this from your favorite server supplier. Super good. And then finally, our offering of Nebulon machine images matches the AWS approach, but for the software stacks you depend on for your current workloads, whether they're virtualized, containerized, or bare metal, we then maintain an immutable instance beyond the initial server provisioning. So every time you reboot a server, it reverts to that validated instance of the operating system and software stack. So it avoids configuration drift. That's going to help with uptime, and it eliminates potential dormant malware incursions. So it's really important. So Nebulon On, the SPU and NebOS, and Nebulon machine images, those three things really combine to deliver this cloud operating platform for on-premises IT. And that way you can harmonize a heterogeneous infrastructure, doesn't have to all be the same, and it effectively allows you to operate your infrastructure now core to edge more like a public cloud. Okay, that's what we call smart infrastructure. Okay. Now, what you get from this approach is a bunch of things. It's, first of all, it's zero touch. And what we mean by that is, it's cloud-based management. Fleet management is just built in, right? So you can think about reducing operations time, time to automate by up to 75%, or maybe said a better way, get twice as much done in half the time, and who wouldn't want that? And for your DevOps teams, they can literally go from a rack of unconfigured servers to fully provisioned application stack in less than 10 minutes. So very quick on the dime. We also say it's zero dependency. And what do we mean by that? First of all, no OS dependency. The solution supports any OS, any hypervisor. There's never any Nebulon-related drivers or software that you've got installed on your servers. None. By the way, with highly available configurations supported with as little as 2 nodes, you can start 33% smaller versus your typical HCI deployment. We leverage something we call a quorum witness as a service that runs in our cloud. Pretty much, again, behind the curtain, you don't even have to worry about it. The other zero dependency is on the server resources itself. There's no server resource dependency except for a little bit of power. Data services that you run on our SPU, which has a whole bunch of processing horsepower and memory. So now on the server, you get 100% of those resources applied to your workloads, your VMs, versus about 75% in the case of HCI. And even if the server OS is offline, maybe a panic or getting patched or whatever, the SPU and SSDs operate in a separate fault domain and continue to deliver service to other nodes in the cluster. We also say, look, it's zero drift. These templated machine images that we just talked about allow you to deploy predictably and stay consistent over time. And it's zero trust because under the covers here, we have end-to-end hardware cryptographic authentication. We have always on end-to-end encryption as well. So your infrastructure is better protected from, a variety of threat vectors. And both with this isolated security domain in the server and protection of both data volumes and the operating system, you can recover quickly from ransomware, malware, should the worst happen. So really powerful in that regard. Okay, now, while this notion of a cloud operating platform might sound like a big deal initiative, getting started with Nebulon actually is done with as little as a small 2-node server cluster. Whether you're looking to modernize VMware or get started with Kubernetes or optimize your infrastructure out at the edge, you don't need to bite off a whole bunch to get started with a really important transition. If you're a service provider, by the way, we have a really cool program called Smart IaaS, and that kicks off with a business planning session with your product managers so we can focus on bringing incremental revenue or gross margin, ultimately customers to your business, wherever your focus lies. And if you're thinking about bringing an application back from the cloud without losing, the operational benefits you like there, we've got, probably the best answer for you in the industry. Finally, if you're thinking about how to best handle ransomware recovery at the infrastructure level, I would advise you strongly to tune into a webinar that we've got going at the end of March, and a big announcement we're making in that regards. There is some really breakthrough technology we're introducing around ransomware recovery, and I mentioned there is no one be-all, end-all solution, but this is a wonderful complement to what you might already have going in your infrastructure. The other thing I would say before we cut to questions is, if any of this stuff has you interested enough to kick the tires, we offer an on-demand, hands-on lab right from our website. No need to engage with our sales and marketing people just yet. Go check it out and see if it's something you want to talk more about. With that, I would say thanks everyone for the time today. I hope we get a chance to talk more in the future, and let's go to Q&A.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation, Craig. We do have some questions for you from the audience. While we take those questions, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there. We want to get your feedback on this. What additional information would you like about the Nebulon solution? And I can tell by the volume of questions that have been coming in here, there's obviously a lot of interest. A lot of folks would like some additional information and to learn more. So let's see, I'll start off with this question from Naresh, I believe is how you pronounce it. How scalable is the Nebulon solution?
Yeah, so certainly from a management perspective, you can literally manage, thousands of endpoint servers through the Nebulon on cloud. That's, what it's built for, but it's also built for the inverse of that, doing that with a bunch of small clusters you might have even on a single site. The other answer to the question is, looking at from a cluster perspective, again, you can start with just a couple of nodes, but you can scale that to, 30 plus nodes in a cluster, and then multiple clusters by site, multiple sites, etc. Scale is not a limitation with the solution.
Excellent. And what about Usman here is asking, what's the ideal use case for this, and is there a certain size of company that this would be ideal for?
I think this is a wonderful way to address, whether you're trying to trying to modernize your, VMware installation, or you're, starting with Kubernetes for the first time, at a medium-sized company, for sure, it's a way to kind of take a step in the direction of modernization, call it step by step, project by project. And again, there are lots of ways to, that we can bring, whether it's, just helping with the overall operations time, infrastructure costs, and let's not forget, better protection from ransomware. I think whether it's a medium-sized enterprise, a service provider, certainly a large enterprise, getting started in a small project there, of course, equally as good.
Excellent. And then I'm sure everyone out there, most everyone has heard of hyperconverged infrastructure. How is this different from HCI?
So here's the thing I'd say about HCI. HCI was a big step forward when it debuted, but that was over 10 years ago. And, the world's changed a bit since then. Moving the data services out of the operating system is an important architectural shift. Why? Because those data services in the OS consume valuable CPU and memory. And so you have to deploy more servers to get the job done versus an approach, like Amazon's taken in their infrastructure, like we provide you with our approach. For every 3 servers you buy for workloads, you probably buy a 4th to throw away on those data services. Number 2, depending on your HCI of choice, you're probably constrained to a particular type of application environment. Most of them are virtualization oriented. If you're thinking about bare metal, it's something different. Containers, native containers, something different yet again. So you're going to be constrained there for sure. So there's a couple of important considerations when thinking about HCI, and not the least of which we're seeing a lot lately is as people modernize their edge and they're looking for high availability, but they don't want to start with 3 or even 5 HCI nodes, starting with just a couple of nodes at the edge with full-on high availability. That's been a particularly distinct difference between what we do and what you get from your HCI technology.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I think that's an important point.
Sure.
Craig, I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live Q&A session. If folks want to get started with Nebulon, we've got here the test drive on the screen. We've got the upcoming webcast. Is that what you recommend folks do to learn more?
100%. Yeah, and like I say, the hands-on lab is, I think the important thing for that, it's for you to kind of do your homework on your own. This is something you hop into without a salesperson or a marketing person. Gives you a feel for the power of, what you get from the cloud. It's really just a microcosm of what we do, but it's kind of a taste. And then, when you come out of that, there might be other assets that you would take a look at before making a decision to engage with us. But then you've got a good feel for what we're all about, and encourage you to do that. And then for sure, given the interest in ransomware, tune in to the ransomware recovery webcast. There's going to be something for everyone in that one for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a hot topic, and I love the idea of the hands-on lab. Is something I'd like to try myself to see this in action. So, Craig, yeah, it's always great having you on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, David. Take care. Bye, guys.
All right. And for more information on Nebulon, check out also the handouts tab. There is a data sheet there on the Nebulon Smart Infrastructure 101 that you can download for additional information. And with that, I want to announce now the winner of our Amazon $500 gift card. This one's going out to Devine Merbaney. Devine Merbaney from Illinois. Congratulations to Devine Merbaney from Illinois. We'll reach out to you, deliver your gift card. All right, and with that, it's now time for our next presenter on today's Megacast. Excited to welcome back Mr. Craig Tiriak, Vice President of Product Management at Scale Computing. Hey, Craig, it's great to have you back on.
Hey, David, good to talk to you again. See, we've got a couple Craigs
Well.
back to back. We'll keep this easy for the listeners here.
That's right. That's right. All right, well, take it away, Craig.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me on, David. It's been too long. We'll have to catch up again soon. But so let me start by, actually, it's interesting. I got to catch the tail end of the prior conversation. I think it leads really well into what I was planning to talk about today with what we titled The Pilot's Guide to Edge Computing. In reality, it's, I was kind of asked to talk about crafting a transformed IT blueprint, and then the context of my company in Scale Computing, it actually said it kind of dovetails into what you were just talking about with HCI and hyperconvergence in general. And so when I think of the IT blueprint through the context of our company, I'm thinking of large edge companies or large distributed companies that are deploying edge solutions like Delhaize, and Ahold Delhaize company. Now, this is a multi-billion-dollar grocery retailer based out of Belgium who came to Scale Computing looking to replace their IT infrastructure on site across some 800 individual locations. And a blueprint is just a set of plans. It's a guide to follow. For Delhaize, their blueprint was really to deploy Scale Computing in place of single servers that they were deploying at the time, kind of point solutions. Hadn't even really made the way into virtualization yet. We're just kind of going on and on, coming up with the next application that would come down the pike. They'd have to deploy additional hardware on site. And obviously, that's not sustainable in today's world, in today's pace. And so just, again, thinking through the lens of what that looks like with Scale Computing, that's what came to my mind. So instead of saying, here's the blueprint they went through, I thought what I'd do today is just kind of talk through the edge computing space, what we're seeing in terms of trends and how people in general are trying to approach this, and what we're seeing successfully done at Scale Computing. So, obviously, in addition to everything that was just said in the last presentation, the businesses that are out there successfully deploying digitalization capabilities in their environments are doing so for really three reasons. It's access to new information, it's implementing new business processes, or possibly just innovating in the customer experiences that they're putting out there in terms of the people that are interacting with the data and things out on their network, out at the edge of their environment. And this movement, it's really ushering in new applications, as we just talked about. It's a lot of cloud native applications. It's containerization. It's not just the legacy IT applications that people have become accustomed to running in that environment. And IT administrators are now having to weigh these new applications and trying to say, do I take a cloud first approach to this, or do I run something on premises? And kind of when I'm in a conversation with the customer, again, I'm in product management, so not really trying to sell. I'm just out there trying to gather information. I love to ask customers, why not deploy this in the cloud? If you're talking to us, you've already made the decision you're going to run something on premises, but why would you do that? The cloud has all sorts of advantages, right? It's unmatched scalability, compute, storage resources. It's really highly automatable by DevOps. Talking about the tooling that people are used to be able to deploy cloud native applications. That's a great place to do that. Little overhead in terms of management for IT infrastructure teams for sure when you're deploying the public cloud. But as it turns out, that the common responses that I hear to that question when I'm talking to those customers fall into about four different buckets. First one's data explosion. They're just creating so much data that it's either not even an option to get it to the cloud, or they just can't afford the bandwidth to put in place to get that data to the cloud, or maybe it's just a kind of nature of the application itself may have a decaying useful life, such as like a video-based application. Unreliable internet connectivity. And in the case of that Ahold Delhaize that I just mentioned earlier, that grocery retailer actually had a lot of very remote sites that weren't able to consistently connect to the internet. So they just couldn't rely on that. And so they needed a consistent approach across all of their locations. And so, having something on premises was a must for them. Low latency is probably the most common thing that I hear these days, although I would expect over the next 5 or so years that's going to change. But low latency basically just means, hey, I can't wait for the latency requirements of getting to and from the cloud for the data that I'm trying to either write or access. I need something local to be able to make real-time decisions. Manufacturing environment's a great example of that. If you're doing anything with computer vision or AI machine learning workloads where you have to make split-second, even sub-millisecond decisions, you can't wait on that latency of the cloud. And then I would say the final bucket that things fall into is just regulation. So HIPAA, GDPR, a given geo or industry where it's forcing data gravity where that workload needs to remain on premises. So kind of taking the next step here, most companies that I'm speaking with are trying to leverage some benefit, right? It's not that they're just deploying applications for application's sake. There's some business benefit they're chasing, usually brought in by some business line manager coming to IT saying, hey, I want to run this new workload, track store traffic in the case of a retail example, or maybe some sensor gathering new data you didn't even realize you wanted to track before, and maybe a manufacturing floor type of environment. These requests are really being made without realizing the burden that it puts on the IT team who is in charge of deploying the infrastructure behind that. And there's just this inherent friction that exists that's hindering your overall company's ability to execute and really adapt and improve these business outcomes over time. Now, obviously, IT is there to help. I mean, that's what it's charged with, to be able to help the business. And I would say every customer that I speak to knows this inherently, and they espouse that. But a lot of them are really stuck in these tough decisions based on just past infrastructure implementations, right? They're either doing point solutions like I described with Delays, where they were running individual desktops, maybe running Windows 7, Windows 10, maybe Windows 11, all the way through to maybe they're running a hypervisor out there on a couple of hosts, potentially with high availability, but then again it comes with the cost of complexity that comes along with that. So what is needed in this environment is something beyond just what's provided by these legacy approaches that I've been talking about. What's needed is kind of a different mindset that is a little more forward-looking, a little more strategic in its approach, and that's what edge computing really is all about. So I probably should have started with this, and I said I missed the very beginning of the last presenter, so he may have covered this as well. This is a pretty common definition of this, but really, what is edge computing? It's simply just a place at the edge of the network where people and things are interacting with the data, sometimes generating, sometimes processing, sometimes both. Edge computing then is that platform to run those mission critical applications outside of the four walls of the data center. And what's I would say really unique to this use case is that it is not a tier one data center. There's nothing really predictable in these environments like you have in a tier one data center. And so because of that, you're faced with a lot of constraints, right? There's limited IT staff, you've got physical constraints, there are connectivity issues or outages you've got to deal with. I mentioned the unpredictable demands of new applications coming your way that you just don't even know. The edge is messy. And when you're creating a blueprint, you really have to take into account these differences between what you're running out at the edge of the network and what you're running in, say, a tier one data center. I mean, if you have zero IT resources on premises, how are you going to deploy this? Are you going to work with a managed service provider to get that out to the site? Are you going to have an integrator stage things first? I talked with a customer just a couple weeks ago, and they don't have a keyboard, video, or mouse on site. So it's not like you have somebody that can even plug into these systems to deal with them. How are you going to handle failures? Break fix is a big part of deploying infrastructure, anything that's physical out at the edge of the network. And ongoing maintenance of the solution involves not just the physical nature of it, but also applying updates, everything from the firmware, the BIOS, kind of everything to protect yourself in a world of ransomware, as the last speaker brought up at the end. Now you have to think through the physical constraints as well. The form factor can really be important. We've got a lot of customers that are deploying on things as small as, say, the Intel NUC, which is a small form factor, very powerful, but very small and quiet design, and that's often chosen because it can be deployed under a desk somewhere, or kind of in an environment where noise might be an issue. Are these things going to be located next to people in an office setting where the fan speed is going to annoy them? Do you even have consistent power to be able to run these? And air temperature is another one that commonly comes up. And I'll walk through a use case later today, or later in this presentation, of somebody that's deploying these out at sea, and just kind of the differences in these physical attributes that you just don't have to deal with in the tier one data center all have to be taken into account when you come up with that blueprint. How are these applications going to be deployed? Are you going to have application level availability, which is fairly common sometimes in some of these kind of Kubernetes deployments, or just container-based deployments where you've got container management systems sitting there to manage and monitor that? Or are you going to rely on the infrastructure to provide that level of availability? And then ultimately, how are you going to respond the next time a business leader asks to implement some new application you didn't really account for whenever you set up the initial infrastructure and when it was deployed? And so all those things have to be taken into account. And ultimately, obviously, you're looking for something that provides the availability you need for your environment. It has to be simple to set up, simple to manage in an ongoing manner. you need to have a level of efficiency. This is so, as I said earlier, HC3, our main product, is a hyperconverged solution. And the last speaker was absolutely right. I mean, I would say most of the HCI vendors out there have quite a bit of overhead when it comes to the software design that they have, just in terms of compute resources required to run those storage services. With a product like ours, HC3, you can deploy these on really, really small form factors and maybe only have 4 gig of RAM or less dedicated to the operating system, where the rest of that can be available to running those workloads. So efficiency matters, especially when you're multiplying this out at multiple sites at scale. And then finally, flexibility. It's something that has to be able to scale out to match the needs and requirements of your environment as things change over time, because you're not going to know what's coming down the pike, and you have to recognize that up front. So all that said is this brings us to the HC3 product. So HC3 is a hyperconverged product. It's combining the storage, the servers, the hypervisor, and disaster recovery capabilities into a solution that allows you to run legacy applications right alongside these new modern applications that people are moving toward. And it wraps it up with a fairly simple to use user interface with full management orchestration that can be done centrally. So you don't necessarily have to have full access to these sites physically. You can monitor these remotely. So I thought what might be useful would be to walk you through the product itself. And this assumes that my screen sharing works, so let me try that real quick. And David, if you could just verify that this comes through when I hit share. Is that coming through at all?
That's good. Yep.
Perfect. All right, cool. Good to hear. All right, so what you're looking at here is what I would call our HC3 fleet management user interface. So this is a centralized, cloud-based fleet management system that allows you to connect into all of your HC3 clusters that might be sitting out there at all of the individual sites, or maybe multiple clusters even at an individual site, and manage them and monitor them and orchestrate them just from this one single interface. So I can put in my local credentials, or I'll just use single sign-on so I don't have to type anything. And here I'm presented with my dashboard. So this is across my entire fleet of HC3 clusters. Now this is our lab, so there are all sorts of issues going on in this lab, as you can see, based on the red alerts and orange alerts here in the user interface. But if this were the very first time you were logging into the system, you might have a much simpler interface to deal with. You might have just a single cluster. And I thought what might be useful would be to walk through what it looks like to deploy a first cluster of this. And David, sorry to ask this again because I had to switch tabs on you. Are you able to see just this individual cluster that says Scott Demo at the top?
Yes, I see it.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so this is an individual cluster. This is actually our HE150. It's a NUC-based platform. Each of these nodes is running 16 gig of RAM. And ahead of the demonstration, I plug these things into a rack. Actually, I think these ones are sitting on a cabinet shelf somewhere. Plugged it into power, plugged it into networking, assigned an IP address to every node in the system, and then initialized it. And then that process registers it with the HC3 platform that allows you to manage this at scale. So think of this as full HCI in a small form factor, ready to roll out of the box in less than an hour. And everything that I just described there is it's a fairly simple process. As I mentioned, manually it takes about an hour. But if you're creating a blueprint for deployment of this type of thing, it's not just about deploying a single site, it's deploying at scale. And so some of the things you want to think through are, are you going to automate the provisioning of this? Do you want to use things like kind of a staging area, either at your site or maybe through an integrator where you're providing all the IP address information and assigning that with MAC addresses? We do have the capability, which we see pretty commonly used, where you're taking a USB with all the configuration details, just in the back of the nodes, and all these things spin up so that you can go from unboxing to being up and running without even ever having to manually log into the system to check anything. And so part of the blueprint of deployment of this isn't just the, how am I going to get these things out of sites? How do you actually stand up the cluster and make sure that the applications themselves are being pulled in and running on the system? So again, this is a 3-node system. I thought what might be fun would be to walk through creating a new virtual machine on here. Really any cloud native application, containers, VMs, everything really can be run here centrally on individual nodes. I'll give this a name, description, select an operating system, maybe select an ISO to boot from and click create. And that's all I'd have to do to manually create a virtual machine on this system. And I'll go ahead and start this up. Obviously, if you are doing this at scale, it's not about logging into every individual site and creating a VM just like I did. This is really just to show off the simplicity of the product. But in reality, we have a full REST API, and you're likely going to script up the installation of the workloads that are running on your site or out at each of the individual sites. And I would say that we also have some of the more advanced capabilities built into this, like Cloud Init, that allows you to kind of hand off ththese REST APIs to DevOps to interact with as infrastructure as code, so that they can go from automatically deploying not just the virtual machines, but also the containers and Kubernetes environment as part of a full CI/CD pipeline. So here I've started this VM up. The nature of edge computing means that these nodes and these clusters have to be able to operate autonomously. So if you are running critical workloads out at the edge of your network, you have to make sure that they're designed so these applications will maximize ultimate uptime. Part of that in how we deploy this is through what we call state machine technology. So we are constantly monitoring thousands of conditions on every node in the system, and we're kind of using those conditions to be able to make decisions like, all right, so I've just turned this specific VM from offline to online. That's a state change from offline to online. Now I'm going to set that on one of the nodes based on availability at that point in time. Another condition that's just popped up on the screen here is a warning of insufficient memory to start all VMs on alternate nodes, which is kind of a useful thing to know if you're going to be operating at scale and somebody has started up workloads in that environment that don't allow you to be able to tolerate things like a node failure or even rolling upgrades, which are included in a scale computing system like this. So at this point, because these conditions exist, this warning, what that means is that if this host fails, I actually don't have enough RAM available here to restart all the workloads from this node on the other nodes in the system. If architected correctly and you don't have those conditions that exist, you would be able to just fail those over. And as an administrator, you don't have to have somebody on site. You don't even have to log in to make sure that happens. That just happens automatically. And so as the administrator, you're going to receive alerts through syslog. You're going to receive alerts through email. You likely will have a team of people, and I'll switch over to this other tab here, where you can see that you'll probably have a team of people monitoring this centrally. And as those conditions pop up on the cluster, they also start to populate here in the user interface, where you might have to take action on that remotely. Now, that's high availability, and that's the resiliency that's built into HC3 and why it's so important. But what we don't commonly talk about is the scalability of the system. You're talking about really small form factors and being able to deploy these across multiple sites. Scalability is no longer just the ability to scale out the cluster itself. So as new things come on, it's great that we can add additional nodes that don't necessarily match CPU or storage or anything. You can kind of scale out as needed to match the requirements of the environment. But scalability in this context is, how are you going to manage? How are you going to orchestrate? How are you going to deal with the fact that you have hundreds of sites? And so this is kind of a nice, simple, single interface to be able to manage across all those individual sites. And so it's kind of populating up all of the disconnected clusters, critical alerts, warnings, info alerts, all those types of things, alongside being able to do things like applying an update. And as I mentioned, the updates that we provide are everything from the firmware and BIOS all the way up through the storage stack and the hypervisor. So it's kind of all in one without any downtime in those running environments to be able to do those rolling upgrades. Let me stop sharing and we'll head back over to the slides here. As promised, there's just a couple slides left here, and then we'll get to any questions that I can answer. But I thought one of the use cases that I thought might be interesting to talk through is this Northern Marine use case. So Northern Marine has about 80 ships worldwide. It's obviously in the marine industry, so these things are going through international waters, and you can imagine the ship operation applications that they're running here have to stay up and running because they're running important things for the crew, and as well as the cargo management, accounting, all the simulation and training videos and things that they have to have on there, in addition to just some of the basics of firewall security, file print type services. All those things have to run and stay operational. Meanwhile, these things don't necessarily have a constant connection to the internet. They only have that connection whenever they come into port, typically. And so autonomous operation is vital in this, and this is one of the more successful deployments that we've seen out there. More successful as defined by, I just think it's about the edgiest possible use case you could ever talk about. As I mentioned, Delhaize, other companies that I've talked to, even if they are land-based, have connectivity issues, but this is about as extreme as it gets when you're telling a story of autonomy for running these things out at sea. And whether you're running them out at sea or you're in, state and local government or in education or, maybe running a chain of hotels, if you're running mission critical applications out at the edge of your network, you need simplicity in your environment. HC3 provides that in spades. And I think with that, David, let's open it up to questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation. Really love you taking some time to do the demo there. That was cool to see it in action. You all have updated the interface, modernized it since I last saw it, so that's really cool. Some cool improvements there. I'm just going to bring up this poll question for everyone out there in the audience. We want to get your feedback on this. What additional information would you like about the scale computing solution? And so let's now go to the questions from the audience. Lots of good questions coming in. If you have a question for Craig at Scale, now's the time to ask it. Terry's asking, here's a good one. What about training? She wants to know what kind of training would be required to operate the Scale HC3 infrastructure, and do you all offer it?
So to be honest, there's not a lot of training that's needed. I mean, the demonstration I just gave you, congratulations, you're now certified on running HC3. In reality, we do have a handful of training courses available. A lot of them are targeted at edge customers and at MSPs that are going to be providing these services, across multiple sites. MSP is actually, I would consider that edge in a lot of ways because you're kind of a centralized resource that's monitoring a whole bunch of remote sites if you've got clients running physical infrastructure on premises like that. And so for those customers, we have everything from, how just general overview of how the system works and how to operate with it, but also something more specific along the lines of that deployment and automating that deployment and, all of the goodness that goes around with getting things out and deployed.
Excellent. Yeah, that's something I've always appreciated with Scale, is it just seems super easy. Another comment here actually from Scott, who says we use Scale HCI in the Neoshu School District, and it's excellent stuff. So that's great to see.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Brian is asking about automation tools, if they're going to roll out to 50 locations or whatever it might be. Do you all recommend or offer any sort of automation tools like Puppet or Ansible, he mentions, for that sort of scalability or rollout?
Yeah, we do have some integration with Ansible that we can get you access to as part of that rollout. Most customers right now are just using the REST API for defining a lot of that stuff alongside, kind of an on-premises version of zero-touch provisioning that I had mentioned with the USB. So the way this works is you basically create a configuration file, put that on a USB, and in that file you're defining all the IP addresses, all of the cluster setting information that you would want as associated with a specific MAC address. And you can have hundreds of these things in a single configuration file. Put that USB in the back of the nodes, and when it boots up, instead of it reaching out to hc3.scalecomputing.com as part of the registration process, it will just look locally for that configuration file as a starting point, and it'll go through initializing the nodes, initializing the cluster. You can even do some scripting to do some of the workload generation as well, to kind of bring on workloads as part of that. So it's pretty flexible.
Very nice. Another question here, they're asking about the software licensing costs. What's the model for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we ship everything as an appliance. I'll say that out of the gate. And by everything, 90% of the things that we ship. You can just buy the software, but almost all the time, what people will do is they will come to us to buy the hardware and software combined. We ship that pre-integrated so that you can go from unboxing to starting to create those virtual machines and other workloads with little overhead. The software licensing itself, it's core based, and so basically as the cores go up, the price will go up linearly up to a point, and then it caps at a certain point. And then we also have for these larger edge customers that are deploying tens to hundreds of sites, we have what's called a site license. And so with that, you don't necessarily have to license the cores itself. You're licensing the cluster, and whether that's a single node system or a replicated pair or a 3-node plus system, it doesn't matter what the resources are. You're covering the site license. And I will invite you as just kind of a next step is to go to our website. We're pretty transparent with the pricing on there, and you kind of go through a few different configurations to see what that would look like comparatively. But I can tell you that at a high level, product management, we're constantly looking at competitive landscape and making sure that our price positioning strategy holds. And our price positioning strategy is typically that we're going to be under most of the other HCI vendors out there, the Nutanix, the VMware, all of those we will typically come in under.
Very nice. Yeah, I like that transparent upfront pricing model. Matthew's also asking about costs as the sites scale up. So, maybe the compute scales up without storage, or maybe storage scales up without compute. What typically happens in there, and what can you do to keep the costs still affordable?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say probably the most common scenario that I see right now is that people will expand most common scenarios, people are just going to add additional nodes. So that's going to be compute and storage combined. It's going to be aggregated into the cluster, and everything's going to be seamlessly pulled together and ready to roll. But I would say the most common scenario outside of that would be that the storage starts to expand beyond that of the compute. That's what we're seeing right now. And for those use cases, we have what's called storage-only mode. So you can add a node to the system, even in a 3-node configuration, where you really only have 2 nodes worth of compute and 1 node that's just participating in the storage only. So you have all the high availability that you would have in a 3-node system. You've got rolling upgrades and all the great functionality we just talked about, but you don't necessarily have to pay Windows licensing costs on that third host if the compute is not enabled.
Got it. Okay, I like that. And then, you talked about scale as an edge solution, but there's a question here from Vivek. He's asking if this would work as well for a medium-sized enterprise, and I'll add on to that and say, will this work for really any size enterprise?
Yeah. So it's if you go back, actually, probably David, the last time you saw the user interface, our bread and butter as a company for the last, and I've been with the company for 11 years now, for the last 14, 15 years has really been, we target small to medium-sized businesses. And we did that intentionally because these businesses are completely understaffed. There's no way you can be the person answering the phone of the CEO who's having email trouble as well as dealing with the infrastructure itself. It's just kind of a jack of all trades IT scheme. And we developed this product and all the state machine technology and everything to make sure that this stays up and operational so you can just set it up and forget about it. It was specifically for that SMB dealing with just a single site or maybe a site and a failover site. As time has gone on, we recognized that really we had developed that product unintentionally for any place that has limited to no IT resources. So it just happens to be that edge computing matches that on any individual site level. But the SMB, even mid-market companies, really do have a lot of success with HC3. I would say we're not going to go in and win the data center of a Fortune 500 company. That's not a target of ours. But I would say SMB, mid-market, kind of mid-sized enterprise type of companies, as well as those companies that have multiple sites. And again, it's going to be across retail, it's going to be in manufacturing, healthcare, you name it.
Excellent. Well, Craig, I know we could probably chat here for another hour answering all these excellent questions that are coming in, but I'm afraid we've run out of time here in our live Q&A session, so we'll be routing these remaining questions to you electronically. But thanks so much for being on. Great presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, David. Take care.
And thank you to everyone who asked all the excellent questions. We will, like I said, route those over to Craig electronically. Also, make sure that you check out the PDF that's available for download there in your audience console. It's entitled The Pilot's Guide to Edge Computing Deployment. It's a very nicely done resource, so make sure that you check that out. And with that, it's now time for our next prize announcements here. We have an Amazon $500 gift card, this one going to Justin Ellenwood from Michigan. And our next grand prize for another Apple iPhone 13 Pro, this one going to Marco Membelli from Illinois. Congratulations, Marco Membelli from Illinois. We've still got 3 more iPhones, 4 more Amazon $500 gift cards. Of course, we still have our best question prizes, one for each of our Q&A sessions, all to give out still today on the Megacast. So make sure that you stay tuned for those, as well as some more awesome and educational content. And with that, it's now time to bring in our next presenters on the Megacast. Welcome to Matt Elliott, Developer Advocate at Rubrik, and special guest, Tony Carrero, Enterprise Systems Manager at the University of the Pacific. Matt and Tony, take it away.
Thank you. As introduced, my name is Matt Elliott. I'm a developer advocate at Rubrik, and I thank you all for joining us today. With us today is one of our customers, Tony Carrero, with the University of the Pacific. In this session, I'll give a brief overview of the products Rubrik offers, and then I'll turn it over to Tony, and he's going to talk about what he's doing at the University of the Pacific and their journey to the cloud. In a nutshell, Rubrik is cloud data management. But what does that mean? Whether you need to protect resources in your on-premises data center or instances running in the cloud, Rubrik has the capability to ensure that your important data is protected. Even if you haven't started your cloud journey, Rubrik has cloud archiving capabilities built in, allowing you to leverage inexpensive cloud storage and ditch depending on tapes. This is what our on-premises protection basically looks like from a high level, and we call this Rubrik CDM. At the center of our product is the SLA policy engine, which simplifies the job of defining recovery point objectives for your resources. The same policy defines retention, archiving, and replication settings all in the same place. You can use our pre-canned SLAs or create new policies to match your business needs. Then it's just as simple as pointing Rubrik towards your virtual environment and assigning an SLA to your resources. Rubrik takes over from there, backing up data and archiving it to the cloud. Simplicity is truly at the core of our product, but behind that simplicity is a load of impressive tech. After you've archived your VMs to the cloud, Rubrik can convert them from their original VM format to a cloud-native image. As you'll hear from Tony in a moment, this is a convenient way to migrate workloads to the cloud and can also be used for disaster recovery. If you spent much time working in the major clouds, you know that their APIs are at the very core of their platform. Well, Rubrik is the same. Our platform was designed to be API first. Every single action performed through the UI is making an API call to the Rubrik cluster. This means that you can easily automate tasks in Rubrik using tools like Python, PowerShell, Ansible, and Terraform. With these tools, you can integrate Rubrik into existing management tooling and build new integrations and offerings. Personally, I'm constantly surprised by our customers and the interesting ways they use our API. So with a little imagination, there's almost no limit to what can be accomplished. The last CDM feature I wanted to touch on briefly is our native immutability. Those are big words, but basically what this means is that after your backup data is written to a Rubrik cluster, it cannot be changed. This immutability is at the core of our custom file system, which powers Rubrik CDM. This means that Rubrik is untouchable by malware and ransomware, and systems protected by Rubrik are easily recoverable should a disaster strike. When combined with the defense-in-depth approach to security, Rubrik provides the last line of defense in your ransomware defense strategy. Attacks are on the rise right now, so if you haven't thought through your recovery strategy, consider being put in the position of having to pay a ransom to unlock your critical data. We have customers who've been in the same spot, and fortunately, they've never had to entertain paying off criminals. The current pandemic has only accelerated cloud adoption, and for these resources, our Polaris SaaS platform has got you covered. Polaris provides protections for assets deployed in the public cloud, as well as Office 365. It also acts as a control plane for Rubrik clusters deployed in your data center, allowing you to manage data protection across your enterprise through a single UI. We're continuing to add new capabilities to Polaris, such as ransomware detection and recovery and data governance. Our Radar app, which is one of the apps that runs on top of Polaris, analyzes your backups to look for signs of ransomware infection. If an attack is detected, compromised files can be restored in a few clicks. Sonar, our new data governance tool, helps you understand where sensitive data is stored, including locations you may not have been aware of. If you're subject to HIPAA, PCI, or GDPR compliance, this is an essential tool. That's enough for me. I'll stick around to the end of the session, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But now I'd like to turn it over to Tony.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Carrero, and I'm the Enterprise Systems Manager at the university. I manage a team of systems and application engineer for the university, responsible for everything from servers, storage, to our hosted cloud services and applications. Just a little bit about the university. We're a private university based in Northern California. We have campuses in Sacramento, San Francisco, and our primary location in Stockton. We offer over 80 undergraduate programs and 30 graduate programs, serving over 6,000 students across the university. We have 3 data centers across the 3 campuses, approximately 600 servers, over 90% virtualized with VMware and Amazon EC2, and our ERP system is also in AWS. We also host several SaaS applications, including Canvas, our learning management system. And we have a complete implementation of the Office 365 suite, which is available to all students, faculty, and staff. We also pride ourselves on being a cloud-first institution. Just a little description on that. What we mean by cloud-first is when selecting technologies for university needs and processes, we look to hosted providers and cloud options first, and typically try to go with what makes sense for the given use case. This factors in functionality, usability, cost ROI, the overall goal of reducing the footprint and reliance on our on-premise data centers. This helps reduce the overall risk of disruption to university technology services, and is especially important in this day and age with the transition of the vast majority of our academic services to remote learning. This also supports the goal of providing digital equity for our student communities by providing students access to software needed to support their educational goals from any location with internet. We believe Rubrik has played a critical role in our cloud-first journey and positioned us ahead of the curve, particularly in data protection and management, and especially given the current circumstances in California and beyond. So even though we're cloud-first, we were faced with 2 major sets of challenges a couple of years ago with our legacy environment that were directly impacting university business and limiting our initiatives, particularly around technology. These centered around 2 major factors. So requiring backup modernization and the fact that we were lacking significant capabilities in the cloud, particularly as it relates to data management and protection. These things included an expensive and dated legacy solution, increasing licensing costs, inability to scale with the hardware, lengthy RTO, excessive manual management, and then more importantly, the inability to archive to the cloud, which was a big deal to us. We were previously relying on site-to-site replication, and we had a desire to essentially move our offline backups and archival completely to the cloud, so that way we do a site-to-cloud topology instead of site-to-site. Lack of DR readiness, no AWS native protection. Like so many other institutions, we were growing in AWS more and more instances, and we didn't really have a viable way to consistently back those up, although I know AWS does provide some tools on that in that regard. We really were looking for more of that single pane of glass and the backups to match what we were doing on premise. And then, of course, no backups for Office 365. At the time, we were currently undergoing a migration from our on-premise email to Office 365 Exchange Online, and quickly realized we didn't have a protection in place for those mailboxes for the long term. So to address these challenges, we went through a process of evaluating several different vendors. This process took a couple of months, but we did quickly realize that Rubrik was a clear leader in this space. So with the help of Rubrik, we addressed these challenges by moving to what Matt called a single data fabric. As you can see in this diagram, it is a much more simple and elegant solution, and it really addressed our challenges head on. As you can see here, no longer are we doing site-to-site replication. We're basically, we've simplified backups and data management in all 3 locations with the help of Rubrik CDM appliance, as well as virtual appliances with Rubrik Edge, the presence in all 3 locations. And we're doing all our archival out to AWS S3 for long-term retention. And then We're also backing up using Polaris. We're accomplishing a few different things. So we're backing up not only Office 365 with Polaris, leveraging Microsoft Azure as the backend to that, but then also too, we're using Polaris more and more to just centrally manage everything. We do have a number of appliances deployed, and Polaris is a real great tool to not just report on, but also centrally manage those appliances, particularly from a high level. So as you might imagine, the single data fabric provided significant business value in multiple areas. We're saving time and resources for our administrators so they can focus more on start of semester activities, particularly as it relates to this fall, given the circumstances, and ensuring that students can maintain a positive experience in the new normal, basically the new remote learning environment. We now have full visibility of protected data for operations and security via Polaris, as I mentioned, and that is providing more actionable data in making decisions that affect the academic environment. A good example of this are the weekly key performance indicators, which are presented every Monday when we meet, and that helps to keep our overall cloud costs down, particularly as it relates to archival and whatnot. And then we've changed the way we archive data and backups for long-term retention. This is really freeing us up to build a better backup retention policy for the university as well. This also helps to address compliance with newer regulations around data, including HIPAA, FERPA, and GDPR. So like most in higher education, we're facing several challenges with recent events. Given the recent circumstances, University Technology Services, or Pacific Technology as we're called, we've been primarily focused on, for the university, facilitating hybrid online learning utilizing the HiFlex model, ensuring remote access for students, faculty, and staff. We're utilizing services such as AWS Workspaces and RD Gateway for remote access to resources and labs, and helping to facilitate direct use of our cloud and SaaS services outside of the VPN. We're addressing and monitoring increased demand of our hosted services, particularly as it relates to Office 365 products. And no longer is there a dependency on our on-premise data centers for email, but also OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint are dramatically reducing the reliance on in-house services such as our department chairs and home folders. We're also assessing DR readiness and continuity of service, as I mentioned, most recently addressing the rolling power outages and wildfires in the Northern California region. For example, on this point, just over a week ago, we actually did experience a power outage on our Stockton campus. However, the data center services continued uninterrupted, and then with Rubrik archival to the cloud and Cloud On, we had the confidence that we would be prepared for a cutover to AWS should we need to utilize that in the event of a prolonged outage. We do believe that ensuring and improving the stability and reliability of our technology services are key to improving our overall student experience and success. Rubrik provides the tools necessary to transform data management, as it were, from being an obstacle into being an asset to the university's mission in providing exceptional services for students, faculty, and staff. With Polaris and Rubrik CDM, it really gives us a peace of mind for university operations for our cloud hybrid services, Office 365 and beyond. It's really shaped the way we've addressed these challenges and how we've positioned ourselves with regards to cloud hybrid agility and business continuity as it relates to technology in particular, therefore being an integral part of our approach to cloud first. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I'll pass this back over for Q&A.
Great presentation, really cool stuff. Thank you for sharing your real world, story about how you're using Rubrik, Tony. We really appreciate that. We got a lot of good questions coming in. Thank you everyone out there in the audience for the excellent questions. First one, this one is for you, Tony. How long did it take you to implement Rubrik?
So when we first purchased the product, or the suite of products, I should say, it did take us a little bit of time, probably about a month or two of preparation of our VMware environment in our disparate environments. But when we did the migration, it took us 2 weeks. It was very quick. A lot of that entailed, disabling policies previously and then enabling the SLAs, et cetera.
Got it. Very nice. Fast implementation. Next question, they're asking, why did you choose Rubrik over other backup solutions out there? What made it really stand out?
There are two primary factors involved in that. So the first is that the suite of products that they provided, even at the time, they're continually releasing more and more, but they really addressed the challenges that we had head on around data management, both on-prem and in the cloud. So services like, well, just even the CDM itself, you know, it's highly scalable. It has a lot of features that really simplify the backup process. It's easy to use. And then that archival to the cloud was a big one. Rubrik seemed to do this in the most simplest and elegant way possible. And then the other side of that too was the customer relationship. I would say, you know, the team presented to us and everything. It's been an excellent relationship, and we've been very satisfied.
Very nice. Yeah, that's great to hear. There's a question here about Polaris and a single pane of glass. Are you using Polaris there, and has it provided you what you need?
I would definitely say yes. And as time goes on, Polaris is becoming a lot more stronger in that arena. So Polaris can now basically manage pretty much our entire VMware environment as it relates to backups and data protection from the central single pane of glass. We were initially, like probably many other customers, were using it primarily for reporting. But then, you know, with the addition of VMware and EC2 protection, which we moved from our on-premise appliance into Polaris, now we've really centralized a lot of the data protection capabilities. So we do use those pretty regularly. So in that respect, it does provide a single pane of glass because everything's central from within the portal.
And then what about regular disaster recovery exercises? Are you doing those, and how has Rubrik fit into that?
It really depends. Holistically, we have kind of a loosely based set of policies. You know, obviously DR involves much more than just technology. It's also related to business as well. I would say at a more granular level, we do regular disaster recovery scenarios. So we have utilized, you know, live mounting and instant recovery to build out not only just to test recoveries, but then also to ensure stability in said recoveries, as well as build out test dev and stuff like that. And then we've also utilized Cloud On to ensure that, like within a prolonged DR scenario, that certain key servers and services would continue to function even in an AWS environment across our VPN hybrid architecture.
How should people get started with Rubrik? What's the best way? And how would they do a POC to really prove that this is a great solution for them?
I'd say the easiest way to get started, I mean, if you have a contact for a local Rubrik rep in your region, that's the easiest way to get started, obviously. Otherwise, just go to rubrik.com, and there are a multitude of ways to get in contact from there. In a lot of learning resources as well. So you can learn more about our platform, and you learn all about all the capabilities. Aside from our main website, rubrik.com, one of the things I work on a lot is automation, and so we have an automation repository available at build.rubrik.com. And Rubrik Build is our program that highlights all of our open source integrations, automation tooling, and things like that. You know, setting up a POC is something we have prospective customers do all the time, but that would be, you know, reach out to us and say hello, and we're happy to get that process started.
Excellent. That's something that I know that you all at Rubrik have always done a great job on, is providing training material, educational resources, and automation. To me, Rubrik is just super strong when it comes to automation. I think that's all the time we have, but it's been really great having you on. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Tony, and thank you for being here, Matt.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much.
I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? We do want to get your feedback here on the poll. I see lots of great questions coming in as well. We are routing these over to the Rubrik team. We've run out of time for our live Q&A session, but we are routing these over to Matt and the Rubrik team electronically. It was great to hear Tony's story about how they're using Rubric at the University of the Pacific. So I appreciate Tony joining us on the Megacast today. All right, so I'll leave the poll question up here for a few moments and just to hand it on over to fellow moderator, Mr. Scott Becker, to announce our next Amazon $500 gift card prize winner. Scott?
All right. Yeah, thanks, David. So the winner of our next $500 Amazon gift card is Jin Zhao from Missouri. So congratulations to Jin. We'll be in touch about claiming your prize. And I do want to leave this poll up for just one more second. So if you were thinking about answering it, just want to give you a little more time. And then we will move on to our next presentation. Okay, well, thank you to everybody who filled out the poll question. And now it is time for the next session in the Megacast on crafting a transformed IT blueprint. And our next session comes from Okta, and presenting for Okta is Lance Malakara, Group Product Marketing Manager. So let me turn things over to Lance.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lance, and I'm fired up to welcome you to this session. This session is called The Role of Identity in the Enterprise, an approach to hybrid IT. Today, I want to walk you through our vision of how we can help companies make the most out of their hybrid IT environment using Okta. We are going to talk about how we think about identity as a connected fabric that can help larger organizations with complex environments make the most of their hybrid IT infrastructure by connecting all of their systems seamlessly with Okta, and how IT teams can deliver a seamless user experience across on-prem, hosted systems, and public cloud environments thanks to Okta. My name is Lance Malakara. As I said, I'm a product marketing manager here at Okta, where I lead our efforts to help large organizations transform their IT and business operations and realize the value of identity across hybrid environments. So in this session, I'm going to be covering a broad topic today, which, as you can imagine, is hybrid IT. We're going to start with sort of like laying the foundation or level setting the group on what hybrid IT is, why is it here to stay, and how we see our customers thinking about hybrid IT. Then we're going to get into how you can actually connect all of your hybrid IT resources using Okta. And then we'll spend the majority of our time walking through the different products and solutions that Okta has built over time to help large organizations extend Okta to secure hybrid IT environments in many different ways. We'll do a quick demo of all of these different products and solutions, and we'll conclude with a vision of how we are taking or where we are taking these products in the future. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the thesis for this session is that hybrid IT is not going anywhere. Hybrid IT is actually here to stay. It is growing, and in fact, it is the environment of choice for the vast majority of companies out there. But what do we mean when we say that? Well, first, we've got to define hybrid IT, which is composed of the combination of public cloud, hosted services, and on-premises data centers. So it's not just things that are on-premises or that you keep under the desk, but it also includes a broad range of things. Hybrid IT is prevalent in large companies for an array of different reasons. From an IT perspective, the trends that we see here are actually fracturing IT operations. So we see our customers finding themselves responsible for managing dozens of environments and having to streamline hundreds of disjointed services. These services are often scattered across the entire world. The resources and the applications are scattered. Your users are actually using different technologies and taking various different approaches to leveraging the technology that they need in order to get their jobs done. All of these things lead to what we call hybrid IT. And over the last 18 months or so, we're actually seeing an acceleration of all of these trends. Let's look at just a small subset of what IT is responsible for, which is the array of applications that the organization is using. You have some applications that are going to SaaS, and with good reason. You have some that are being hosted by a third party. Some are third-party applications that are hosted by IT, but purchased from a vendor. Some are actually custom applications built internally, and this one's actually increasingly common for what we can see with our customers at Okta. Custom applications that technology teams are building and operating, and that IT is on the hook to support and increasingly to participate in the development and operation of these technologies. And this, I just want to highlight, as being increasingly common because companies actually see this one in particular as an opportunity to differentiate themselves through technology from their competition. So organizations see that the more adaptive they are, the more agile they are when it comes to building new technologies to support their business, the more differentiated and successful they are going to be in the market. And again, the most likely scenario in this case is that you are probably dealing with some hotspot, some combination, if not all of these scenarios all at once. So for all of you, or those of you in IT, you can probably relate to some, if not all of these challenges. So hybrid IT is real. It is prevalent, and it is actually growing. It is a challenge, but it's also a big opportunity. There are many benefits and reasons why it makes sense for organizations to want to keep a hybrid IT environment. In fact, 89% of companies are actually choosing a hybrid IT environment. 89% of companies, that means the vast majority of companies out there are actually deliberately choosing to maintain a hybrid IT environment. So when you look at the combination of on-premises, hosted, and public cloud, the overlap here is what we refer to as hybrid IT. Now, hybrid IT is admittedly a fancy or bossy word that we use, but it does encapsulate what we're talking about here. Hybrid IT is the result of companies growing more quickly than ever before, of technology playing a bigger role in defining business models, and technology professionals working to meet the demands of global business. Not only is hybrid IT growing, but actually the more successful organizations that we see are the ones, especially when we talk about larger organizations, are the ones that are embracing hybrid IT. To them, hybrid IT provides options. It provides opportunities. So there is this very interesting stat in this area that 80% of IT professionals surveyed by IDC report repatriating workloads from the cloud. That means bringing workloads back from the public cloud. And the reason for this is, there are actually a lot of different reasons and value drivers to do this. The top ones are security and performance and cost, and also control and centralizing and reducing shadow IT. Particularly, if you look at the bottom right corner with the top 5 reasons for this, you can see that in the end, it really comes down to control. And so when you look at organizations that are successful, it's the ones that are looking at the benefits of the public cloud and infrastructure as a service, looking at the benefits of SaaS, but also keeping in mind that there are things that they can do more securely, more cost effectively, and in a more performant way by doing so themselves. So we see that hybrid IT is growing. And when we look back at the last 18 months or so, we can see that there's been an acceleration of some, if not all of these trends that are feeding the growth of hybrid IT. So not only were companies already distributed before the pandemic, but now all of their employees are working from home, working from anywhere in the world, really. We also see that budgets are much more constrained because companies are really trying to ruthlessly prioritize in this environment. Industries themselves are rapidly shifting. So not only are we looking at different business models fueled by technology within the same type of industry, but we see industries being upended because of the paradigm shift that the pandemic brought about. But the truth is that in reality, these challenges were not triggered by the pandemic. They were only accelerated and became more urgent because of the pandemic. They became the biggest priority for every company's ability to operate in this environment. So if we look at that again as an acceleration of these trends, the challenges that companies need to sort are also growing and becoming much more urgent. So it really comes down to that. How can I make my users not have to jump through so many hoops in order to get their jobs done and to interact with my business? And this is where Okta can help. Okta provides a suite of capabilities to help you connect all of your hybrid resources into the Okta Identity Cloud, regardless of where your resources live, so that you can provide a better experience for all of your users. At the center of our hybrid IT solution is OAG, or Okta Access Gateway. which we'll cover in more detail in a minute. We also have Advanced Server Access, or ASA, which helps you connect to critical infrastructure via SSH and RDP keys. So really connecting at the infrastructure and server level here. And ASA is actually going to expand in the near future to connect to public IaaS providers like Azure, GCP, and AWS, as well as to containers and databases. And finally, we have agents that connect Okta to legacy technology via various legacy protocols to help you connect to different types of servers, Wi-Fi, and VPN, among others. Diving a little bit more into agents, our agents extend Okta and apply that to legacy non-web protocols, so things like Radius and RDP, for example. Some examples of these are that we have a plugin for Microsoft ADFS. We also have a plugin for Epic EPCS, which is a healthcare software. So the benefits here is that you get that Okta-like experience, in particular, that single set of credentials to authenticate to all of these resources that are not only in the cloud, but also on premises. And you also get to layer on things like multi-factor authentication and incorporate some of our platform services like Threat Insights and Risk Engine for that additional layer of security. As mentioned before, Advanced Server Access, which extends Okta to connect to Linux and Windows servers, the benefit here is also the ability to bring Okta's single credentials to access servers, including all of the innovation that Okta brings to the table, like secure passwordless authentication, which is tailored to individual users. It uses ephemeral certificates to authenticate users rather than having to type in a username and password every single time. And we're expanding ASA to deliver more robust privileged access controls over time as well. And now I want to walk you through some of the most important things to know about Okta Access Gateway, which, as I said before, is at the center of our hybrid IT strategy here at Okta. I want to walk you through how OAG is helping customers solve their hybrid identity challenges. So Okta Access Gateway enables customers to extend Okta single sign-on and adaptive multi-factor authentication to web applications that do not support modern integration standards without changing the legacy source code in these applications. It supports legacy authentication methods like header-based authentication and URL authentication as well, also Kerberos. It also helps protect complex applications like Oracle E-Business Suite, PeopleSoft, and others. What makes OAG unique in the market, though, is that it helps customers consolidate on a single identity platform across cloud and on-prem apps. Because Okta was born in the cloud, OAG can deliver the reliability, the simplicity, and the cost savings available with Okta to protect your legacy on-prem applications. This is actually unique in the market because there aren't any cloud-native identity as a service providers protecting legacy on-prem applications at scale. And legacy identity vendors are struggling to evolve products that were originally built for on-prem only environments and move them to the cloud. As a result, customers are actually left struggling with many of the challenges that we spoke about in the beginning of this presentation, including disjointed identity silos and a broken end user experience. So the big picture here is OAG allows you to modernize legacy infrastructure with modern cloud-first authentication and consolidate on a single identity platform across hybrid environments. The result is an integrated environment with centralized access controls for your on-prem and cloud applications all together, with efficient, uniform security policies across all of your systems. And this means that users can access any application, anytime, from any location, and through any device. They can do so using a single set of credentials, and they don't even have to think about which applications are hosted where. There are two primary use cases where we see Okta customers using OAG to solve critical hybrid identity challenges. The first use case is modernizing access to legacy web applications with modern identity solutions like SSO, adaptive MFA, as well as other Okta tools. This helps customers consolidate disjointed identity policies on a single platform and deliver a cohesive user experience. The second use case is enabling secure remote access to on-prem applications for any user, regardless of where they are located. This helps businesses reduce their dependency on VPNs. As you know, VPNs struggle when a large number of users request access altogether and pose an inherent risk if they are used improperly. So the first use case is modernizing access to legacy apps. Companies that have been around since before the explosion of the cloud, as we have stated, are very likely to have mission-critical applications running on premises. Sometimes moving these applications to the cloud can be an incredibly complex multi-year task. And in some particular scenarios with companies that operate in highly regulated industries, for example, moving to the cloud might not even be an option at this time. However, protecting these resources with modern security is a top priority. And this is where OAG actually can help. Customers can modernize access to legacy on-premises applications by extending Okta single sign-on and adaptive MFA without the need to write a single line of code. OAG makes us the only identity as a service provider that can fully replace legacy single sign-on and WAM solutions like SiteMinder or OAM. And it helps customers standardize complex identity silos onto a single unified system. So how does this work? This slide shows a bird's eye view of the complexity that is often involved in enabling secure access to on-premises applications using legacy WAM or SSO tools. These solutions involve a multitude of elements. They require large server capacity and demand a lot of manual work to run and even more to maintain, making them very expensive, not only in terms of the dollar amount that they take, but also in terms of the human capital required to operate them. With Okta, the story is very different. Most of the components that require large server capacity we can actually deliver from the Okta Identity Cloud. So there's no need for directories or databases, no need for federation servers or MFA add-ons. All of that is taken care of by Okta in the cloud. And because of this, our customers see up to 70% in cost reductions. Also, OAG delivers a web access management capabilities from a single system, which serves as both an identity-aware proxy and an access management enforcement point. Going back to the chain of events triggered by the global pandemic, businesses back then had to pick up any tools that were immediately available for use cases beyond their capabilities. VPN is a good example of this. VPNs are hard to scale across an entire organization, and they even may be a liability if used improperly. Okta customers found a more suitable solution with OAG, which allowed them to enable secure access to on-premises applications at scale, deliver granular security that scales across cloud and on-prem applications with a seamless user experience, and reducing their dependency on VPNs for non-tech-savvy users. So OAG allows customers to move from an all-or-nothing approach to traversing the network boundaries, which increases the surface area exposed to attacks, to authenticating and authorizing the right users into the right applications at the right time. OAG can provide business users with the secure access to applications that they need without using a VPN. And so the goal from a demo perspective is to show how all of your on-premises applications look and feel just like Okta, just like any other Okta SaaS application when it comes to accessing them. When it comes to the user experience of accessing applications, the experience is exactly the same, whether the application is a SaaS app delivered from the cloud or a legacy web application that is hosted on premises. So that's what I'm going to try to walk through in this demo today. So I'm going to switch to, this is my demo environment, and I'm going to start with showing a login to Box over here. Box, as you all know, is a SaaS application, and you know this experience very well of logging into Box using Okta. It's actually pretty straightforward, right? This is one of the biggest value drivers that our customers appreciate from Okta. You click on the icon, and you're straight away logged in to Box using SAML. It's actually prompting me for biometric authenticator as a second factor of authentication for purposes of security. So this experience is pretty straightforward. You click on the icon, you apply your second factor authenticator, and you're logged in into Box using SAML in the backend. It is a modern authentication standard supported by most modern SaaS applications. No passwords are involved, no passwords are stored, and the users log in without any trouble whatsoever. But what about non-SaaS applications? What about legacy web applications that do not support this capability? So for the purpose of this demo, we have chosen to log into Oracle e-business suite, which is right here. In this case, we're using a rapid SSO method of integrating with Oracle e-business suite, which is what this label here indicates. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So the goal here is to be able to deliver as much of a box-like experience for accessing Oracle EBS as possible. In this case, as I just click on the app in my Okta dashboard, it's again prompting me for a multi-factor or second-factor authenticator, which is that is purely policy. That is something that I specified because this is a mission-critical application and because it's hosted on premises that contains sensitive HR and sensitive business information. So I do want that additional level of security. But as you can see, after I do the multi-factor authentication, we're already logged into Oracle e-business suite. So not only was that fast and efficient and secure because we're using MFA, but it was a SaaS-like experience. And you notice that I didn't really connect to any VPNs or anything. And this is something that I am hosting on my premises or in my own data centers. And the way that works, is using header-based authentication. And we have an application to show that. Here it is. The way that works, we actually, in order to illustrate this, we have this application, which is basically using an authentication standard called header-based authentication. It's right here. A lot of legacy providers like SiteMinder or Oracle Access Management actually support this legacy authentication protocol. But as we saw before, these are solutions that have to be deployed and maintained by the customer, making them very expensive and an unnecessary burden on the IT teams. So OAG securely delivers to the backend application the identity information and identifiers for the session to provide that secure access, as well as providing the data that the backend application needs from the identity provider to authenticate users properly. And it does so using HTTP headers. These are the headers that I can send from. These are the headers that I can send from the Okta cloud through Access Gateway to the backend application. So the possibilities here are actually endless or limitless. Here you can see the long list of attributes that are supported today. There's really also no limit to the number of backend applications that you can connect to OAG. And you can send any kind of data that the backend applications are expecting. You can even send things like secrets, for example. Here you can see this value here is a secret, which actually can be encrypted and is not shared with the end user. It's only shared with the backend application. It's being surfaced here because this is a sample demo environment, a sample application, but it wouldn't be shared with the end user in a production environment. So there's a lot of flexibility here. So that was a quick demo just to showcase how with Okta you can actually enable users to access any application, whether it's hosted on premises or in the cloud, with the exact same seamless user experience, which is very powerful. And now I want to end with a kind of like talking very quickly about our vision for OAG, which is to make it much more than a reverse proxy to access your on-prem applications. We see OAG becoming a fabric that comprehensively connects Okta to your on-premises environments, and there's a lot of value that we can deliver for our customers in that way. So it is not just a single appliance or a single cluster of appliances to connect to on-premises applications. Think of OAG as a fabric to connect all of Okta to not only on-premises applications, but to all of your on-prem resources of all types. Think about expanding OAG to include APIs, for example. Think about expanding the simplicity of deploying Okta and OAG so that you can deploy multiple clusters and maintain them all centrally and maintain central visibility of them all the time. Think about deploying clusters globally in different geographies and being able to manage all of them centrally and at scale to meet the needs of different locations. For example, if you have a specific application that has a lot of traffic in certain times of the year, you can ramp it up and down for that specific app elastically. Other applications that have more consistent access patterns, you can have a different set of appliances managing those. So the vision here is that the central connected fabric and that central plane of control to your on-premises environment is connected back to Okta, connected back to the cloud, and making it immediately making it deployable and manageable across the entire world and at scale, getting you massive scale, getting you centralized control and the simplicity of the cloud available for your on-premises systems. And with that, we can begin to serve more sophisticated needs that our customers demand, like customers that manage IT with this continuous integration, continuous deployment philosophy, and also opens the possibility to do continuous risk assessment for all of their resources. So that session integrity checking or granular session controls can be applied not only to the cloud, but to your on-premises resources as well and managed altogether centrally. That's the power of what we think OAG can bring to customers and what we are where we are aiming to take the product in the near future. So again, if this is interesting to you, please go ahead and visit our website, www.okta.com/free trial, and make sure to get started. In just 10 minutes, you can actually get started with Okta, and you can be up and running with your environment. And with that, that's all I have. I hope you found this helpful. This session helpful. Thank you so much for your time. See you next time.
Okay, great. So we do have a poll question for everybody. And we appreciate your feedback on additional resources that you'd like to see from Okta. And it looks like we had a lot of questions that we can't get to right here, but we will route the questions to Lance and the Okta team. And thanks to everybody who responded to the poll. We do appreciate your feedback, and I'll just leave that up here for another moment before we move on to our next presentation. I'd also like to remind everybody about the handout section. There's a link there to resources from Okta, as well as PDFs and links from all of our presenters today. So be sure to check that out if you'd like more detail. And while I leave the poll question up, let's go ahead to our next prize drawing. So the winner of the next $500 Amazon gift card is David Silberhorn from Illinois. David Silberhorn. And the winner of this grand prize, an Apple iPhone 13 Pro, is Timothy Ames from Oregon. So congratulations to David and Timothy. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. Okay, and now it's time for the next presentation in the IT Blueprint Megacast. And our next session comes from Red Hat. And presenting for Red Hat is Siddharth Nagar, Director of Product Management, and Randy Hildebrandt, Global Portfolio Product Marketing Manager. So I'm going to turn things over to Randy.
Welcome to Open for Business with a security-focused IT infrastructure using the Red Hat multiplier. Hi, I'm Randy Hildebrandt, Red Hat Product Portfolio Marketing Manager. And with me today is Siddharth Nagar, Product Manager for the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. After today's discussion, we'll have a short Q&A at the end to help answer some of your questions. Feel free to post your questions in our Q&A. Many face the challenge of how to safely and effectively extend their environment to the infrastructure edge or deploy applications to meet their increasing business needs, perhaps using container technology, or to improve performance and increase security, and often wonder how their peers in similar industries are tackling security challenges to ensure robustness and consistency with their organization. Siddharth and I would like to share with you 3 real customer stories of how they broke through their challenges and real solutions with the help of Red Hat as a trusted partner and leveraging the Red Hat multiplier. Siddharth, would you expand on some of these challenges further, please?
My pleasure. And hello, everyone. CIOs today face an even greater challenge to scale their IT infrastructure to meet business needs in a secure manner. They must maintain the delicate balance of engaging with legitimate prospects while keeping the criminals out. If they lock down too much, they risk turning away their prospects and customers. If they have an open door policy, they risk letting in unwanted attention. Do any of these resonate with you, and especially those of you in IT operations? Today, we'd like to share with you 3 real-world scenarios where customers of Red Hat have responded to such challenges. They leveraged a multiplier that came from using several Red Hat solutions together. Open for business with a security-focused IT infrastructure using the Red Hat multiplier will help you to consider security as a way to mitigate risk and damage to reputation, to scale securely, and to leverage technology to adapt to customer needs. Randy, do you mind sharing our first success story about customers mitigating financial loss and risk to reputation?
Yes, Siddharth, thanks very much. The government of Ireland's Department of Agricultural, Food and the Marine, known as DARFM, has about 3,500 employees and processes grant applications submitted by farmers and their agents. DARFM receives 30 to 40,000 grant application documents annually, which often include sensitive information. Farmers often fail to classify these documents as sensitive, and agents sometimes upload documents to the wrong application. Oof. As a result, personally sensitive information, PSI, such as a birth certificate or legal documentation or medical information, was exposed to DARFM's basic payment schema employees or even other farmers, creating compliance risks. Applicants' incorrect document submissions led to data breaches. To mitigate the risk of financial penalties and reputational damage from major GDPR breaches, DARFMA sought to replace its legacy data systems and processes. Hey, Siddharth, would you please share with our audience how DARFM achieved this impressive transformation?
Happy to do so, Randy. DAFM and Red Hat collaborated to develop a solution which uses real-time artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities to extract metadata and other contextual information from unstructured grant application documents. This helped them identify a potential data privacy breach as the document is isolated and only authorized individuals can view the contents. As a result, DAFM drastically reduced the number of breaches and the associated reputational damage that comes with it, along with the reduction in financial penalties, if at all. As an added bonus, DAFM reduced development time from weeks to days with automation, APIs, DevOps, and improved security and stability with enterprise technology and support. Specific products from the Red Hat portfolio that helped achieve this outcome are Red Hat OpenShift, Red Hat 3-Scale Management, and consulting services. Now that we've talked about DAFM using the Red Hat multiplier to mitigate risk, let's look at our next customer who scaled for high transaction volume. Cassicorn Business Technology Group, Jalisco, and Miles & More had very similar challenges with scaling their demand to meet rapidly growing customers' demand. Let's talk about KBTG, as it's known in short, in more detail. KBTG supports the day-to-day operations of KBank and serves as a technology developer and partner for fintech firms in Thailand. One of the services it manages for KBank is K+, Thailand's most popular mobile banking application with more than 11 million users. With this app, users can make payments via a QR code, transfer funds internationally, and manage their investments. Over the past 5 years, K+ has expanded to double its user base. To support this growth and bring new features and services to market faster, KBTG needed to overhaul its existing IT environment by optimizing its IT infrastructure. Randy, would you please share more details on how KBTG, working with Red Hat, achieved this result?
Sure, Siddharth. So they evaluated the solutions through 3 different vendors. After a pilot, the company chose to work with Red Hat based on its mobile and industry expertise here. Over 4 months, KBTG worked with Red Hat Consulting to migrate from its existing platform to Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Red Hat JBoss Enterprise Application Platform, AEP. Red Hat Enterprise Linux provided a consistent foundation across deployments and the tools to deliver services and workloads faster with less effort, and with any application on any footprint at any time. Red Hat JBoss EAP provided a middleware for modernizing Java apps, which helped KBTG integrate its front and back end systems to deploy and manage applications faster across environments. Additionally, KBTG has created a unified notification feed system called uCenter and deployed it on the Red Hat OpenShift container platform, a Kubernetes-based platform. uCenter uses Red Hat AMQ, a lightweight messaging platform, to provide service alerts for various offerings, from financial services to lifestyle services such as product promotions to money transfers and payments in the K Plus app. Improving messaging technology from Red Hat combined with the container and microservices-based approach helped dramatically improve the volume of transactions that KBTG can process, as well as improve integration with KBank's business partners to further scale the business. You can see from the slide quote here that what they achieved through the integration of KBTG's Red Hat application environment with its existing security infrastructure and policies. This integration helps provide greater visibility into security and helps simplify protection of customer data and internal IT assets by maintaining compliance and regulatory policies. This is a great example of how others run the business with proactive approach with security as a key aspect. They were able to cut development time in half, achieve scale that they needed, and centralize operational insight for more responsive management and security. Next, let's look at under Argentina's universal healthcare strategy. Public health care is free and accessible to all citizens and residents there, more than 45 million people across 24 provinces. But patients may wait up to 3 hours at a healthcare center or travel 50 to 60 kilometers to see the nearest doctor or specialist. They often have seen at one hospital but get tests done at another, or need to go to a private practice for imaging, but then go to a public hospital for care, requiring them to bring hard copies of test results or medical history information to each facility. To solve these challenges, the Ministry of Health decided to build a national digital healthcare network. This network would let the Ministry of Health address complexity, data access, and IT performance challenges, but universal electronic health records require scalable, more secure technology. The ministry's existing database were built on slow legacy solutions with monolithic applications that could not and would not be upgraded. As a result, each development stage took weeks, even months, greatly delaying the time to market there for them. To automate the flow of public health statistics and management of unified systems here, the Ministry of Health sought to establish a flexible yet stable IT infrastructure. Now, Siddharth, please share more specifics around the Red Hat Multiplier and products and services used here for them and the results that they achieved.
Happy to, Randy. Argentina's Ministry of Health built a national digital health network that allows care centers to securely access patient data through standardized integration between providers. Working with Red Hat, the ministry was able to develop a solid set of services that are interconnected with a standard set of APIs that could be extended based on changing business needs. This new digital health network helps Argentina continue to streamline the patient experience. For example, the country is implementing a national digital prescription standard to let doctors create prescriptions, check for interactions with these prescriptions from other providers, and share them digitally with pharmacies. Once again, Red Hat Enterprise Linux served as the solid foundation for this network. Red Hat OpenShift helped them collect, manage, and analyze all of that information to provide real-time numbers, and Red Hat 3-Scale API management provided a standard API integration mechanism. This new digital health network helps Argentina continue to streamline the patient experience. As a result, the ministry has integrated medical data for more than 2 million patients across 17 provinces, gained responsive scalability to meet up to 1,200% increase in transaction volume, and establish a protected API-based data access backed by community and Red Hat expertise. As you can see from the quote from Fernando Nunez, this engagement was a true partnership and resulted in lasting change and a new way to approach the problem. Now let's tie this all together. We know that cloud can't solve every challenge, and organically improving your existing infrastructure is also not the right answer. Organizations must scale their IT needs to match the business priority. Our analysis has led us to conclude that organizations must focus on 3 pillars to achieve digital transformation to enable their business. First, they must extend their architecture to run both traditional and cloud-native workloads anywhere, all the way from the data center to the edge. Second, they must modernize their application to support cloud-native applications that can be highly integrated and continuously deployed. And lastly, they must support management at scale by enabling automation across application teams and processes. 2 additional items that overlay across each of these multipliers are training and services to help teams improve their processes in order to get the most out of their open hybrid cloud approach, and partner ecosystem to give customers technologies that are tested and certified with most major cloud hardware and software providers. We refer to this in aggregate as Red Hat Open Hybrid Cloud Strategy. This strategy helps you architect, develop, and operate a hybrid mix of applications that deliver a truly flexible experience with the speed, stability, and scale required for digital business transformation. Randy, what are some of the next steps that we can share with our folks to where they can go to learn more?
Thank you, Siddharth. As we move to our Q&A time, please feel free to note your questions in the Q&A area. You know, we only touched on a small portion of this multiplier in our short time. So where can you find out more Red Hat solutions? Go to red.ht/built-on-linux, or you can take a further look at the customer case studies we've shared using the links provided here. We also included videos and demos to go further into how these solutions can help you overcome these challenges. Just download the PDF presentation for the links, or we'll be glad to send the PDF to you. Please note that we will have another webinar in our Customer Stories series on the Red Hat Multiplier, which will cover reducing IT cost. Now, let's go to our Q&A time. Please add your questions so that we can answer them at this time. Great. So let's take our first question. Hi, Siddharth, why don't you handle this one? It's you mentioned that the relationship with Red Hat allows us to learn from others in similar industries, kind of like we mentioned on several of these slides. Where can we go to learn more?
Sure. Hello, everyone, again. Yeah, that's right. So Red Hat has over 50,000 unique customers. And one of the big values of the Red Hat subscription is that our customers learn from one another in addition to us learning from our customers. So a lot of the material that we shared today is derived from publicly available references that you can access on the redhat.com website. Be sure to also check out the references section that of this presentation that Randy and I just shared with you. Also, Red Hat sponsors local events where we invite regional and local customers with similar interests in of similar industries to interact with one another and really learn from one another. And lastly, we also want to remind everyone of our annual conference, which is called Red Hat Summit. Summit is a great venue for our customers and our partners to interact with Red Hatters and to interact and learn from similar experiences.
Okay, thanks, Siddharth. I'll take this next one. Next question here. Services were a big part of some of these customer implementations that we talked about. How exactly does Red Hat help to ensure successful implementations? Well, really, Red Hat services can help in two ways. First, Red Hat training provides enablement to your teams with the curriculums and the certifications that really span Red Hat product portfolio, covering RHEL and Red Hat OpenShift and Red Hat Ansible platform. And for organizations really interested in automation and other types of areas. The second is with the Red Hat Consulting. And here, they assist in adoption processes that you may have and need with the existing products here, helping you to leverage Red Hat products to really meet those business needs that you have. To range with Red Hat services, consulting or training, just talk to your account executive or go on to, or your territory services manager, or go on to the Red Hat website and click into services there. Another question, Siddharth, maybe you can cover this one. You've made a compelling case for investing in security, but I understand that Red Hat products are expensive and the free products are also good. How can I convince management to consider Red Hat seriously? That's a good question.
Yeah, it is, and one that we frequently hear from our customers and prospects. The community projects and distributions offer a chance to preview the technology. Mm-hmm. However, if you look into it a little bit more, studies show that the cost of ownership of adopting these community offerings is actually greater than commercial offerings. So it's also true that Red Hat has options for customers of varying budgets. For example, do you know that we offer no-cost subscription options that give access to virtually all of our portfolio? We also offer subscriptions for teams in small to medium-sized entities that are also no or very low cost. And lastly, we also have a whole set of subscriptions catering to developers. If you go to our website or developers.redhat.com, there's a lot of information on how you can very easily access and deploy in production Red Hat technologies. So our goal is to make Red Hat offerings accessible to all and easily available.
Great. Thanks, Siddharth. So it looks like I've got one more question. So make sure if y'all have any final questions, please put them in the Q&A there. So how exactly does the Red Hat multiplier work? Well, Most want really a holistic view of their infrastructure. And put it simply, you want to manage your stack and not individual pieces of the stack. Red Hat takes great care to align these life cycles, the backward compatibility, upgrades, so that the stacks support your infrastructure efficiently. Red Hat can really greatly reduce that cost of operations by providing a fully integrated set of products to support those IT needs. Your another aspect really is that you know, and we all know that's really important to everyone, is security. So RHEL has built-in security features that flow upward through other Red Hat solutions used with RHEL that inherit those security features. That's what's really meant by the Red Hat multiplier as an example, and the value that allows data and features to be leveraged by Red Hat products used together. All right, I'm looking to see any other questions. No? Okay, so that's all our questions for today. So this closes out today's discussion on Open for Business with a security-focused IT infrastructure using the Red Hat multiplier. We look forward to helping you in any way that we can. Look out for more information on the Red Hat multiplier webinars in the coming days and weeks, on customer stories like we've shared, as we focus on areas such as reducing IT costs and scaling through automation. Also, please complete our survey. We'd appreciate your feedback. That helps us provide relevant webinars to you. Thanks, and have a great day.
Okay, great. And again, we do have a poll question for you. We appreciate your feedback on additional resources you'd like to see from Red Hat. And thanks to Randy and Siddharth for taking those questions and for that great presentation. We've had a lot more questions come in that we don't have time to get to at this point, but we will route those to the Red Hat team so they can get back to you. And again, thanks to everybody who's responded to the poll and who's responding. We can see the responses coming in there. We do appreciate your feedback. And in addition to the resources that Randy had just had up on the slide there, I do want to remind you about the handout section. There's the Red Hat handout is a PDF. It's an 8-page white paper. Some really good information in there, so be sure to check that out if you'd like some more detail. And let's go ahead to our next prize drawing while we leave this poll up here. So the winner of our next $500 Amazon gift card is Doug Grammer from Ohio. And the winner of our next iPhone grand prize is Eric Tucker from Louisiana. So congratulations to Doug and Eric. We will be in touch to get you your prizes. So our next session comes from NetApp, and presenting for NetApp is Wyatt Bennett, Principal Product Manager at NetApp. Wyatt, welcome to the Megacast.
That's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Take it away.
All right. Without further ado, so thanks and good day to everyone. I guess I'll start by saying many of the topics here on the agenda are really near to dear to me. As a former IT ops and engineering manager, I transitioned over to product management about 8 years ago, and I really have been focusing on a combination of solutions, software, and go-to-market automation as well, with the current focus on hybrid cloud and enterprise application solutions. For my presentation here today, I'm going to spend some time on NetApp and VMware's hybrid and multi-cloud solution area. I'll share some recent developments in NetApp's strategic alliance with VMware, and how we're seeing joint customers really operationalize hybrid models at enterprise scale. NetApp and VMware solutions are really enabling customers here to maintain a consistent data services and operation plane between on-premises and hyperscalers. That's really the unique differentiation from my point of view, just really high level. And VMware's public cloud offerings of choice now are available within AWS, Azure, or GCP. So with that, let me just jump in here Hopefully you can see the slides advance.
Yep, they're going.
Great. So just to quickly level set on NetApp and VMware's rich history. As you can see on the slide here, VMware and NetApp have been partnering for over 20 years with close product integrations and nearly 20,000 joint customers. More recently, NetApp and VMware have been working together on VMware's data services within AWS, Azure, and GCP public cloud offerings. And over the last 12 months, as most of you probably already know, VMware has gone through some pretty significant change that sets the stage for what I'm covering here today. The first is that VMware spun off from Dell, and they're now operating as an independent company. So again, a primary goal of the transition here was to be able to widen their market beyond a Dell-centric approach and to operate as a multi-cloud software company. Second is that they've got a new CEO, Raghu Raghuram, and Raghu has very clearly from the top down focused the company on multi-cloud as their focused GTM and really the direction that they're taking the company and taking the software. So succeeding in the cloud is a key to growing their business. The third here is that VMware has had enough time in the market with their current cloud offerings, which up to now have been solely based on vSAN storage, to really understand where vSAN fits and where NetApp's cloud data services can help their customers address economic performance and security needs. And for these reasons, VMware and NetApp are now actively collaborating at the executive and the engineering levels on hybrid and multi-cloud solutions. NetApp's ONTAP data stores are currently in private preview within AWS, Azure, and GCP VMware offerings. And this is in addition to what we can do today with ONTAP in the cloud for guest-connected virtual machine storage, and that's generally available today. The further integration really allows customers to address storage-heavy VMware workloads while bringing down the cost of their licensing because they can scale out without scaling the ESX hosts in the same way, and it also reduces the service costs as well. Jump ahead here. So just to spend a few minutes on use cases, we see a range of common adoptions from our customers as it relates to hybrid operations. So many of our customers really begin their journey initially leveraging public cloud for secondary structured and unstructured data use cases. Sometimes this takes the form of archive, and other times it really evolves fairly quickly to serve workflows spanning from on-premises into public cloud, whether VMs, apps, containers between on-premises and their cloud-based systems. Some customers adopt hybrid architectures between on-prem and cloud really over a smaller duration of time, say 6 months to a year, while they, for example, evacuate a data center or migrate a specific set of applications into the public cloud, while we see many other customers, many more really, adopting hybrid as a new operating model, where they're leveraging public cloud as an extension of their existing environment with some combination of app and infrastructure services running between on-premises or colo and into public cloud environments. And this is where NetApp and NetApp's ONTAP platform really shines. ONTAP acts as a single storage and data services foundation between sites and colos. You can deploy ONTAP on engineered hardware in the data center or as a managed file service in your cloud of choice. And with that, you get a consistent, performant, and scalable data fabric for your environments with fully integrated snapshots, data replications, and APIs across your sites and clouds. As it relates to VMware and NetApp's hybrid cloud solution, we see customers increasingly adopting VMware public cloud offerings. And we see this primarily as an accelerator to their business objectives because data center extensions and workload migrations into public cloud, they can be time consuming and quite involved, as I'm sure many of you guys know. So use cases like business continuity can be executed more quickly with the skills that customers already have and without costly refactoring when you've got VMware on both ends. So, and as I mentioned previously, NetApp and their native ONTAP data store support within VMware's public cloud offerings are currently in private preview. And we're really proud of this because NetApp's ONTAP is going to be the first external data store option in VMware public cloud offerings. With this capability, our customers will be able to fully attach managed, low-cost, high-performance NFS data stores built on NetApp's ONTAP file system into VMware Cloud SDDCs so that customers can scale their VM storage environment as needed, and as I mentioned, without the need to actually purchase additional host instances. So very, very favorable economics. Just transitioning on here. Yeah, so of course, with the agility of hybrid cloud operations also comes some new business challenges and project level challenges that need to be considered. Just to take a step back for a moment, let's say we're an IT manager or a CIO with an edict to consolidate data centers or migrate substantial portions of an on-prem estate into one or more public clouds. Most VMware customers have a large investment in the people, processes, and tech around their VMware platforms. A central value prop of the VMware and NetApp hybrid cloud solution lies in maintaining a common fabric for virtual machines, containers, and data spanning on-premises and cloud environments. With that common fabric comes an ability to move into cloud faster and more economically, using the resources and the skills that customers already have. So a common objective that we see for many customers is refactoring some of their applications, often into cloud-native architectures. Having a common data and virtualization fabric with consistency between VMware and NetApp ONTAP on both ends helps customers pave a more dependable path between their on-prem and public cloud environments. And then out of that, the customer can decide when and where to refactor their applications based on their business objectives and their timelines. So if you're an IT manager or a CIO leading a business initiative that encompasses on-prem and cloud infrastructure, and of course software and apps, the advancements that we have in VMware's public cloud offering and then emerging capabilities like NetApp ONTAP data stores can really help customers, companies extend into the cloud to meet those objectives more quickly. And again, with consistent enterprise capabilities on both ends. So VMware and NetApp's hybrid solution here really helps to address many of the challenges that I've discussed on the slide. We talked about the migration complexity, controlling costs, interoperability. In terms of workload mobility and security, NetApp ONTAP and VMware HCX really work together to securely move workloads and data to the cloud and back in a turnkey fashion. NetApp ONTAP here really accelerates the structured and or unstructured data movement with integrated SnapMirror capabilities. SnapMirror is ONTAP's efficient replication engine, and it's fully baked in, completely integrated into all of the ONTAP offerings. So the same replication that a customer would use between clusters on-prem is used between on-prem and the cloud, and even within cloud deployments for multi-zonal and multi-region architectures. Okay, so just looking a little more closely at the solution. So at the data layer, NetApp ONTAP is delivered on your choice of AWS, Azure, and Google. And it's really a rich, consistent data management for your on-premises and your cloud resources. NetApp's ONTAP provides multi-protocol file and block support and access with high availability for apps and services. The storage efficiencies and rich manageability are fully integrated into ONTAP, and they're available through flexible consumption models. And this applies across the board, again, whether you're deploying ONTAP on engineered hardware in the data center or as software or as a managed service in cloud. The NetApp and the VMware hybrid solutions here are backed by fully validated reference designs and cooperative support models for the use cases like dev test, ransomware protection, and disaster recovery. NetApp ONTAP integrates directly into VMware vCenter. As I mentioned, the rich integration history, so operations like cloning, VM data protection, application management, et cetera, are further simplified through those integrations. I should mention here too that we see many new customers begin in the public cloud from a VMware public cloud perspective, and oftentimes migrating off storage platforms like Isilon onto NetApp and VMware in the public cloud. For these customers that activate first in the public cloud, they typically end up extending some footprint back to on-premises because they see the value in maintaining this common data and VM platform across their sites and clouds. And of course, VMware here offers a very rich enterprise migration and disaster recovery services that we plug into, as well as comprehensive integration with third-party backup and recovery, like Rubrik and Commvault and Veeam as well. So just to summarize and wrap up here today, NetApp solutions with VMware really helps customers more effectively manage VMware migrations, hybrid extensions, and enterprise apps. So the customers can implement that consistent hybrid architecture and begin migrations without refactoring necessarily, using the staff and the operational models that they have in place today. And so we're really excited to see our hybrid solutions grow to include high-performance storage, NFS data stores, as I mentioned, with NetApp as the first external data store in VMware's public cloud offerings. With that, I'll go ahead and wrap. Thanks, everyone, for the time today. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, super. Really nice job, Wyatt. Appreciate that update, and I'm going to go ahead and advance us here to the next poll about the NetApp solution, what anybody would like, but we do have a few questions in here. Let's see. Looks like this question, they're looking for guidance on how to migrate workloads to the cloud. Do you have any sort of hybrid cloud advice, sort of best practices as far as, migrating workloads to the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've got limited time, and it's a really big topic. This is one of the solution areas that we specifically have gone very deep on. I'm just going to give an example just to shed a little light in hopefully a positive direction here. So when we look at how customers are migrating data from, of course, VMware and potentially structured, unstructured data from on-premises into like an AWS cloud where we have a VMware cloud offering, what we typically see is that some of that data, again, is of course VMs, right? And for the data set that's actually VMs, VMware has a really rich set of options. The most popular and the most well-known is HCX. Now, HCX is essentially a part of a hybrid VMware linked environment, and HCX can actually help you with the movement of those workloads across the wire from on-premises into cloud. Now, NetApp can operate or interoperate with HCX in a very transparent way, and we can also, for customers who are interested in perhaps moving larger segments of data or all of their VMs and other structured and unstructured data sets at the same time, that's where NetApp SnapMirror and the replication engine comes into play. So there are really a number of options that and capabilities that we integrate into both VMware's product line and also at that data layer that we can help customers realize. And then the last thing I'd say is that just something generally that I've seen working with customers is many customers will actually have a kind of a staging or a buffer zone in between their on-premises environment and their cloud environment. I won't go into this, as I mentioned, quite a big topic, but with that buffer environment, some customers do it for a prep and sanitization. Some folks are looking at it more from a compliance and regulatory standpoint. And so just this concept of a staging environment in between your on-premises production workloads and your cloud workloads is something that I would encourage the folks on the phone to take a look at.
Okay. All right. Super. We have a question here from Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, maybe you could provide a little bit more detail. The question is, what about price evaluation? I'm not sure if, what direction you're going with that one. So maybe if you could provide just a little more detail on what you're asking about, that would be great. And while we're waiting on that, we have another question here from Isaac, who says he has a challenge of keeping confidential data for his insurance customers. What security options or access controls are in place for NetApp snapshots that have moved to the cloud from on-prem?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing is there's, as many folks are aware, there's encryption at rest, and then there's encryption across the wire, right? And of course, and then there are all kinds of security nuances in between there. So NetApp and VMware are working to ensure that we've got encryption at rest and encryption in flight. And we're also making sure that we have GovCloud readiness. Now, this is a really large topic, and my presentation here today spans 3 clouds, so 3 VMware offerings and 3 NetApp offerings separately as well. But what I can say generically is that we are, our goal is to have, at time of GA for the new native data store capabilities that I discussed, full encryption at rest and encryption in flight, so that, and what I mean by this, to go back to that migration example, is that you could be encrypting your VMs at rest on premises, and then that migration of the workload across the wire from on-prem to your cloud of choice would also be encrypted by the HCX and or NetApp software, depending how they interoperate and which migration capabilities are selected. This is something I would encourage the team. We've got a lot of collateral and a lot of detailed reference designs on security and ransomware from a NetApp point of view that are really fully available off the netapp.com page as well. So happy, of course, to chat with anyone after the call as well. Just back to pricing, back to the prior question. One thing I would say is that I know that VMware Cloud is purchasable fully through the Amazon AWS marketplace. I am fairly certain that you can now also get the VMware offering, Azure VMware Services, and the Google VMware offering as well through their marketplace. That's not the only route to market for getting the VMware offerings, but I'm just calling it out that typically available through the cloud-specific marketplaces, as are the NetApp services. So NetApp services that I mentioned here, the ONTAP data stores, are all fully available within the marketplaces as well, and happy to provide more details on the pricing. Unfortunately, we don't have the final pricing for everything that I referenced today in terms of the data stores, because we're not quite GA yet, but a lot of the pricing I can go much deeper on as needed.
Okay, all right, super. Another question here. It looks like somebody's running VMware on NetApp and looking to migrate their VMware workloads to the cloud. They're looking for some best practices, I think. Any thoughts there?
Well, yeah. So the first is we have reference designs today for migration and deployment in all 3 public cloud offerings. So that's reference design material that we have available today. It's on netapp.com, and if this individual can't find that, please do reach out to me, as well as anyone else who hears this and is interested. I'll point you in the right direction. And we're really building out this content repository for these hybrid use cases. So use cases like disaster recovery, as I mentioned, dev test, burst to cloud. We're going very deep with these reference designs, working hand in hand with VMware and the hyperscalers, and we're making a very serious investment in these reference designs. So these are fully validated; they're not just paper qualifications. And I would encourage folks, depending on regardless of which cloud they're operating on, to look at netapp.com. And if they can't find what they need, please come to me.
Okay. All right, great. Well, Wyatt, it looks like we're running out of time here, but if somebody wants to get started with NetApp or find out more, what do you recommend? Where would you point them?
Yeah, I covered a lot of ground today. Thanks again for the time. 3 VMware cloud offerings mentioned here, 3 hyperscalers mentioned here. NetApp.com is a great starting point. Of course, VMware.com and the marketplace of your choice is the right starting point. So I would steer in the direction either of NetApp, VMware, or the cloud provider. All of those avenues can bring you back to the information that you need. And if you need something more specific, please don't hesitate to come back to our team. And thanks again for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Wyatt. Thanks for coming on and bringing us up to speed on NetApp.
Sure thing. Take care.
Okay, and now it's time for our final prize drawing of the day. So the winner of the last $500 Amazon gift card is Brandon Vickers from Texas. And the winner of our last iPhone grand prize of the day is Paul Settle, California. So congratulations to Brandon and Paul. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. And please bear with me here for a few seconds while I post the list of winners in the Q&A section. Give me a couple more seconds here. I'll just respond to Chris's question with that. Okay, you guys should see the list of winners there in the Q&A tab. So congratulations again to all of our winners today. And that's almost it for our event today. Before you go, I do want to mention our ransomware.org site. This site is a tremendous mix of basic and intermediate and advanced information about ransomware, along with blogs that offer, I'll call it breaking analysis of recent ransomware incidents. It's a great site to stay up to date on ransomware and ransomware defense techniques and tools. If you were attending today and you were thinking, this is the kind of event that I'd like to be part of, our company would be perfect to be presenting on an event like this, we'd love to hear from you. Just email us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And if you enjoyed today's event, we have another one coming up on Thursday, Transforming IT in Healthcare Environments. So the sponsors on that event include Progress, Rubrik, Synology, Faction, Duo, and Nasuni. It's going to be a great event. If you're in healthcare IT, we'd love to see you. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such great presentations and demos, and for offering their insights in the Q&A portion. I want to thank all of our participants for making this event possible: Ned and Rich, Nebulon, Scale Computing, Rubrik, Okta, Red Hat, and NetApp. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's Megacast from Actual Tech Media and for all of your great questions. So that concludes today's event, and we will see you next time.